Welcome to this very special broadcast. It's the mid-year review going to be presented to Parliament by the Finance Minister, Dr. Amin. And of course, we are here to give you comprehensive coverage of that delivery, as well as all the analysis and predictions of what this means for you in an economy that has really been ailing for some years now. At this midpoint of 2024, an election year, what can we expect government to propose as the shape and color of the economy going forward? We have all the best voices to give us analysis. You'd better stay here. We are live, of course, on the Joy News channel, as well as Joy 99.7 FM. And you can catch this on all our social media platforms as well. We're on X, we're on Facebook Live, and on YouTube. Now, on our YouTube channel, before we go any further, just take a moment to subscribe to this channel so that you can continue to get updates as and when we bring you broadcasts of this nature. Now, thank you very much for choosing us. We're going to keep you occupied for the next few hours as we do pre-analysis. We enjoy the presentation together, and then we do some analysis on the other end of it. And here in the studio, I am privileged to introduce one of our guests. He's the Associate Director of Tax at Deloitte, Ghana, Mr. Wisdom Kpano. Wisdom, it's a pleasure to have you.
A pleasure.
Excellent. We will be joined by other guests as the conversation proceeds. But it's good that we have you to start with, because tax is a big deal. We saw the reduction in some taxes at the beginning of this year, and then, of course, some taxes were ramped up. Now, we've seen the effects of this. The expectation as we go into this mid-year review, the whispers are that we may be seeing the removal of the COVID levy. We may be seeing the removal of the e-levy. Now, what would these do to our affordability of the basic goods and services here in Ghana?
All right. Okay, so thank you very much. It's a day that we are all expecting. I do not expect many changes by way of tax policy because it's mid-year, it's election year, so you're expecting government to just work around measures, give an update on how we've performed from a fiscal and economic side, and how we would work out our targets going to the end of the year. If there are whispers around COVID levy, the e-levy, of course, these two levies only add to cost. It adds to the cost of the households. So as an individual, these levies would reduce your disposable income. It reduces how much CD you have in your pocket to be able to buy. If these levies are indeed removed, we can expect some relief, even if it's marginal, some relief for pockets going out to acquire goods and services. And it will be the same for businesses. For businesses, the 1% COVID levy means a lot. It's a slap on their cost of operation. So any reduction in levies and taxes that add to cost would be welcome news for the business community as they work towards the end of the year and also work around the rising cost of doing business in Ghana.
Now, I mean, in the 2024 budget itself, we did see some tax reliefs.
Yeah.
I certainly recall the zero rating of VAT for locally manufactured African prints, zero rating of VAT on locally produced sanitary pads.
Correct.
Now, import duty waivers were made for raw materials that were going into local manufacturing of sanitary pads. Extended zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles. That was extended for 2 more years. There was a waiver of import duties on imports of electric vehicles for public transportation. And that is supposed to last for 8 years. There were many others. But I'm wondering, have we seen an effect of these particular waivers? Is the economy better for it? Is there evidence of this?
Well, in general, I would say these are early days yet. So again, going back to the 2024 budget that was read late last year, These reliefs came as welcome news for the specific sectors, and this was government's response to the growing request for reducing cost of doing business, the tax burden on businesses. So government, even within the IMF program, found pockets of opportunities to incentivize some sectors. The VAT relief for sanitary pad production, for instance, came at the back of a lot of advocacy. You can look at the civil society push from that side, but you can also look at it as incentivizing local production as against imports of similar products coming into the country. I would expect that the reduction in VAT costs for these local producers would have some very good impact on their operations already. But 6 months is early, but it is also a good time for us to look at the data to see have they been able to produce more? Have these producers been able to bring their pricing levels to competitive levels that they can compete with the imported alternatives and also make a mark by way of employing more Ghanaians into their business, expanding, etc. But it will be interesting to see how this relief has trickled down into the business operations. And then there are others. There was a focus on electric vehicles, and that comes in a bigger picture of bringing taxes close to our drive towards climate change and effecting these changes in business operations, in opportunities where investors go into. There is one on VAT reduction or import duty and VAT duty relief for EV vehicles for public transport. For that, I can say that would be medium to long term, because it's difficult to imagine anyone importing, say, a bus that will run on electric vehicle in this year. I would expect that with this exemption in place, that would then bring investors thinking in another way. But that would also need to go with infrastructure. So EV import duty waiver, I do not think that would have made an impact yet. I don't expect that it would make an impact in 2024. But I expect that will gradually drive attention both from a public consumption preference and also for investors into where they look when it comes to investing in the automobile space. But some good reliefs came in, but we are hoping that there can be broader reliefs and changes that can drive the economic turnaround we are all looking for.
Stick with us, Wisdom. There's a lot more for us to talk about.
Right.
But right now, I can take you live to Parliament, where my colleagues George Riafe is standing by with our parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante, so that we can get a feel of how things are ramping up in anticipation of the mid-year review presentation. George and Kweku, if you can hear me, it's all yours.
Oh, yes, Kojo Youngson, thank you very much. Alive in Parliament. It's 10:47, just about 47 minutes past the time that Parliament ordinarily expected to start proceedings from Parliament. The mid-year budget should be the finance minister has arrived, but a number of majority MPs are now trickling in. If you look within the chamber, you see Lowusu, Minister of Communications, you see Patrick Boama. If you look within the chamber, you see Lowusu, Minister of Communications, you see Patrick Boama. The new chairman of the Finance Committee, you will also see Patricia PJ, the Deputy Majority Leader, Dr. Stephen Amwa, Deputy Finance Minister, is also here, and a number of MPs, the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister is also here. So quite a number of people coming in, building anticipation. No one from the minority front benches have so far taken their seat. No NDC MP also has come in. We are getting some signal, and we'll confirm then, and we'll talk to them about that. But George, it's a big day. This is the final mid-year budget review that the government is going to present. Anticipation are high. What are you working your sources? What are you getting?
But Kweku, before we even get into what we are working our sources, we'd like to again let our viewers appreciate why this thing happening. And if you go through the Financial Management Act, it actually requires that every finance minister, not later than July 31st, or the end of the month, has to come to the House to brief the House. Now, why is this thing being done? you remember that this year's budget, for instance, was presented in November 2023. Yeah. Now, that was based on economic data ending September and all those things. So the law actually requires the minister that before the end of July, come to the House, brief us. Haven't gotten the full year data. Does it mean that the economic data or the economic target for the year has to be reviewed? And that is very critical. Come to the House and update the House. Also, has fresh revenue come in that you think you need to come to the House and seek approval and do all those things? Give us a better picture of how the full year fared for last year, the half year, that is for the year that you're currently in, and then also project for the rest of the year. Yeah. So this is not something that the minister has maybe a room to operate. The laws actually requires him to do that, and that is why he's coming to Parliament. In the past, there have been instances where government wanted to spend more. So you had supplementary budget being brought on board to ensure that that is done. It appears that from what we have picked up and what we've engaged the minister, he's insisting that there wouldn't be a supplementary budget, but they're going to go ahead. But again, why is this mid-year review of 2004 estimate very critical? Because we are under an IMF program. And so these IMF institutions want to know whether we're on track with the program. Again, don't forget that we are currently also negotiating with the external bilateral creditors, the Eurobond holders, and we're also yet to finalize a deal with the commercial bilateral creditors. Yeah. So this is a budget that haven't gotten the full year data. Are you going to revise your macroeconomic targets? And also, how are you going to use the rest of the year to convince these creditors that indeed you are committed to fiscal prudence? What we are picking up is that the minister would want to use this mid-year review of estimates to assure these partners, the business community, that government is committed to fiscal prudence. If you look at our challenge over the years, it has always got to do with election overruns. And that is why the challenge is that tell us that for the next 4 months of this year, are they actually going to stick to what has been approved in the budget? Yeah. What else are you going to do? We are hearing that the minister would even be revising some of the expenditure lines for this year. And that would be really a big challenge going into an election year where you have to spend. But don't forget, under a fund program, again, we've had instances where the program has been derailed before. So it's a big challenge, and we will want to see the text and how is he going to scale back on some of these expenditure lines going into the next 5 months of this, because our crisis, our challenge has always been with the fact that we overspend an election year and then things get out of hand.
George, thank you. And I'll come back to George pretty shortly. We have a member of Parliament here to try and get some understanding of the kind of issues that they themselves will be expecting. So George is still here. Honourable Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed. Why is your pews empty? It's almost 11 o'clock a.m. Sitting was expected to start at 10 a.m. and there's absolutely nobody in your pews. You've seen your colleagues in the majority turning up to work. Why are your colleagues not turning up to come and do business?
I was the first person to enter this chamber. So I don't think it is accurate to say that the minority is not turning up. Whatever we do here must be started upon the attendance of the Minister for Finance. Maybe perhaps you should be finding out why the Minister for Finance is still not in Parliament. So we can't come and be seated when the Minister for Finance.
But you are the guest. You are the host. You come and sit down and wait for your... In Tamale, that's what you do.
Usually the signal would have been given. If you get to the coffee shop, a lot of our colleagues are sitting there taking our breakfast. I was dragged from the coffee shop. So I'm saying that the interest should be that the Minister for Finance should be here. So I get the sense that the minister is still not ready. As and when the minister is ready.
Let me come in. Could it be that we'll be expecting a surprise from the minority where they are going to boycott this presentation?
Oh, no. In fact, if we wanted to boycott this presentation, we would have indeed indicated that earlier than now. It is within the parliamentary practices to even boycott, if you like, a very important program such as this. We haven't given any such signal.
So the assurance I'm getting from you is that there wouldn't be a boycott.
Our leadership have not indicated to us that we're boycotting this. And if indeed we wanted to boycott this, I don't think that I would have been here. You've seen some of my colleagues, and I've told you that some the coffee shop, The majority, they are not. In fact, you have more NDC members of parliament, in this chamber, than our colleagues in MPP. Just count them. But yes, that's what I'm saying. They all came in and then walked out. You can't come and be sitting there when there is nothing happening. I'm saying that apart from those who are seated here, who you can count about 5 or 6 of them, get out there. You don't have any of them there. But you get out, you have more than 15 NDC members of parliament who actually enter, including the former minority leader. We're all here, and we've been here over almost 2 hours. You remember the time I came here? It's almost 2 hours. They are not ready because clearly, perhaps the budget they want to present is a budget that is blare, that doesn't have a focus, that doesn't give hope, that is not to inspire anybody in this country.
You're already zooming into it. The economy, a lot of people have said, things are turning for the better. In two or 3 years ago, we're in a deep crisis. Things are turning for the better, and the minister is seeking to build on it today.
Scientists are saying the better mpuni, even though my tree is not that good. Better when fuel price, a gallon of a liter of petrol is now 15 cedis getting to 16 cedis, and you describe this as better. Better when the cedi to the dollar is moving around 16 cedis. You call this a better. Better when, transportation fares are increasing, and we have seen signals. Better when the economy is in a very ramshackle state. I really don't think that this is what you can describe as something that is turning for good. Maybe perhaps there is a different definition of what constitutes good.
But Honorable, let's look at the numbers, and I agree with you maybe on the reality. But coming from a past where inflation was over 52%.
Who took it to 52%?
No, I am not praising anybody for turning the corner or hasn't improved the situation. But the fact that when you read the IMF report, yesterday the World Bank released a report saying that the prospects are good. If you look at the numbers, we are seeing some marginal improvement. We are seeing some signs of stability. Does it give you some hope, especially when some will say that you are a government in waiting?
When COVID ended, the IMF indicated to us that the prospects were good. Yet the price, the cedi kept on losing value.
Yeah.
So clearly, sometimes when you take such statements by these Bretton Woods institutions, you'll be deceiving yourself. Tell me, any time you are having an elections, the verdict of the IMF is always something that is good. That is the verdict. In any case, they are pushing down our throat their programs, and we must accept those programs. So you don't expect them to come and say that there isn't any hope. The hope must be felt by the ordinary Ghanaian. And I ask you, do you feel that hope? If you feel that hope, the prices of items are escalating. That's what I've just indicated to you. With these prospects, fuel prices are escalating. With this prospect, the cedi is losing so much value.
Yeah.
It's now 16 cedis,
Yeah.
15 cedis to 16 cedis. A gallon of petrol was sold under the NDC at 14 cedis. Now a liter is sold at 15 cedis plus. And you have almost 4 liters making up a gallon. Everything is gone off hand. And clearly, so if you tell me this is a budget that will inspire hope, I'm shocked. The prospect on paper, they will tell us that are looking so good. Now, when you talk about the inflation, that they took inflation 54, it is important for you to put in context.
Yeah.
They took inflation 15 cedis, 15% from the NDC, mismanaged the economy. It escalated to about 54%, and they have managed to bring it down. It is zigzagging.
Yeah.
You don't have a stable inflation coming down or going up. It comes down marginally.
Over the past 2 months, it has been slowing down. But I'm not praising anyone for this. But some would say that at least then we have some comfort that the situation is showing signs.
They didn't even need to take it to that level, considering the kinds of promises they made, considering the fact that the president himself said he chose Dr. Bawumia as his running mate because he had the panacea to our economic challenges. Unfortunately, the chairman of the economic management team is the most disastrous head of the economy of this country.
I think that some might be debatable on that one. Some will say.
Let's look at the facts. No, let's look at the facts.
Honorable,
it's important. What you say is debatable.
Yeah.
It means that there can be some certainty in some of the statements I've made. Let's look at unemployment. They took unemployment at 8.4%, Statistical Service. Today, unemployment is 14.7%. They took cedi to the dollar, a little below 4 cedis. Today, it is 16 cedis. They took debt to GDP, which was a little over 6.
That this economy has suffered, just like other countries.
So you tell me COVID, right?
COVID, the war in Ukraine, that is still ravaging.
Ghana was not the only country which was hit by COVID. The war in Ukraine did not affect only Ghana. Let's not go far. Let's look at West African sub-region. None of the countries within the West African sub-region went to the IMF and took $3 billion in the name of COVID. None of them took almost $1 billion from the World Bank. None of them dipped their hands into the central bank to take billions of cedis as we took. Infrastructure Development Fund, we took it. Heritage Fund, we took it. And I'm saying that with all this, none of them imposed a levy called COVID levy on their citizens. Now, we were told that you're providing us with free water and free electricity. Not every citizen benefited from the free water and the free electricity. Now, don't you think that it is legitimate for us to demand? And Kweku, you are aware, I have filed questions in this parliament, and I have been reminding this parliament for the Minister for Finance to come and tell us how much was spent in providing the free water and free electricity, and how much they have collected so far. Yet all these tax impositions. So if you tell me that it's debatable, it is erroneous. Nothing is debatable. I am stating the facts that Dr. Baumia, under his watch as the chairman of the economic management team, has messed up this economy. Yet such a person is asking the people of this country to give him the money.
Honorable, we appreciate your time so much.
Honorable Murtala Mohammed giving facts according to him.
I mean, already he's gotten into the political analysis, but I think that it's very critical, and we'll be getting to speak to the former minority minister. And one thing that we'll be trying to also get is that we've got signals that government is trying to be prudent with this expenditure. Are they going to get the support from the minority? Because, again, one would say that it's the whole House that takes the decision on all these things. And how are they?
In fact, when it comes to some of these issues, Honorable Haruna Idrisu has been speaking a lot about what he believes Parliament has not been doing. He has been speaking about what he believes Parliament approving loans and taking part of the blame in terms of how the economy is faring. Honorable, what are your big expectations for today's big day?
This media review of the budget and economic policy of the government of Ghana will produce the same undesirable, disappointing outcome. This media review cannot end Ghana's unsustainable debt. This media review cannot end the escalating prices of goods and services in Ghana. This media review cannot end the frustration of the private sector with the cost of doing business in Ghana. But this media review should be able to reintroduce road tolls. You remember we told them that they will come back to it. Is
that what you are picking up, that they are going to do that? Because the impression we got was that...
If they are a smart government, they have come under the National Road Authority Bill, kind of smuggled it in as a policy without apologizing to Ghanaians that they now believe that road toll is worthwhile. It has always been worthwhile. And for major private sector investment, you need that to spare people to want to invest in that particular sector. I expect them, if they are a smart government, to do away with COVID levy and to do away with e-levy, because e-levy too has become a nuisance tax. You projected that you would earn 6.9 billion in 2021, so 6.9 billion multiplied by 3 years, we should have been out of the woods. They ultimately have ended with just about 890 to 1 billion Ghana cedis. So the projections, they got it very, very wrong. We still think that a paperless, cashless economy is desirable, and we warned and cautioned against it. You remember at the time we held them on for 6 months. I always said that if the Ghanaian public had joined us, you probably would have had the kind of situation that happened in Kenya. But because we were able to hold government, the public still felt that had faith and trust in the legislature. Now, on unsustainable debt, I think that parliaments must share the blame, because we are in this deep hole and steep of superior mismanagement of the economy. And we are, as you are aware, from my sources, the government of Ghana cannot borrow non-concessionary beyond $250 million into 2025, and probably not beyond $500 million into 2026. It's only 2027 that it may look good. All right.
On the bit about the revenue as well, and again, I would say that you are a possible government in waiting. Revenue, despite hitting half-year target, is still under pressure. Would you advise your minister, if you went to do away with these tax lines, because of the fact that, yes, people are going through hardship, but how do you deal with the revenue challenge when revenue is still not doing well? You need to raise more revenue to pay your debts, ensure that you are committed in reducing the situation.
An alternative to expanded improved revenue is to cut expenditure and to discipline and allow for prudence and optimal utilization of your resources. There's too much waste in this country, too much leakages, embezzlement, misappropriation, corruption, our leakages of revenue. If we control all that, I've always said that the day Ghana will behave right at the port, we don't need to be worrying citizens with taxes. All the taxes are at the port. Let's police the port properly, install CCTV cameras at the port, do away with this national security clearance of goods at the port. What business do they have there, apart from fighting crime and other issues? But you get many goods cleared in the name of the presidency, cleared in the name of national security. That's still unintended leakages and loot of the state coffers. Thank you.
But just a quick one as well. We also get from that the minister might seek to scale down on expenditure. From the minority side, together with your members, are you willing to support them in terms of ensuring that there is prudence in expenditure going forward? Because of what we've had this country, our election-related case, and we are here because of what happens 2 months, 3 months to elections.
Election-related case, John Mahama, as president in 2016, behaved very, very well. And you have the statistics and data available to you. We didn't offend the rules, including Bank of Ghana. Look at how much money they've had from quantitative easing and then printing out even against some of their own banking rules and laws. And prudence we need. But this government, what excuse do they have? I mean, you have Bank of Ghana supporting you. Excellency Mahama did not go outside the threshold of what the Bank of Ghana Act and the IMF required him. You remember I was in Washington with you, so I'm familiar with the IMF. We went gasping for air. They came gasping towards the mortuary.
So, you see one interesting thing, that it appears that the political commentary or the political debate has started already.
Yeah.
When you engage the minority side, you get them trying to push the argument that they believe that this government hasn't done well, things are worse, and the political twist to every answer that we are seeking from these members of parliament. And again, on the bit of the concerns that we thought that they were going to boycott, from what he's told us, well, all other things being equal, they are not going to boycott parliament. Let's see what happens in terms of as the time goes on. But again, getting back into what we should be expecting as we're talking about this. So we gather that the minister would try to scale back on expenditure for the year. And for me, I would want to scrutinize or be looking at what they'll be doing because, again, even if it's not election-related spending, there are other projects that are ongoing. Are they all captured in the budget and approved by the House? And that will be a biggest test of the finance minister in terms of how they're trying to scale back lending and still ensure that those projects that have not been completed are indeed completed on time.
Definitely.
We're also hearing that he wants to expand the economy by supporting SMEs because he believes that that might be one of the best avenues to aid in the growth of the economy by giving them the required financial support to grow the economy. So we'll be seeing some policy measures in terms of how to support the SMEs to grow the economy going forward. And that's something we're also going to hear. Also on the fact that, currently they are in negotiations with the bilateral creditors in terms of the external and then the commercial bilateral creditors and even the bilateral creditors as well. So he will be giving us some update in terms of how far they've gotten with respect to all these engagement. The IMF program, I think that if you engage the minority some time ago, they were raising concerns about even the IMF agreement itself being brought to the House for it to be scrutinized. Is he going to update us? We're going to get some update in terms of the fund program, these agreements, and how they are hoping to grow the economy in these challenging times. There were rumors about some revision of taxes. We don't know because, as I said, even though government has been able to hit the half-year target, there is still room for improving revenue. So we don't know whether that is something that government will want to go in terms of scrapping some levies and taxes.
The big challenge, is going into election, falling for the pressure from the public, and then backing
already
down
the organized labor, already,
exactly.
they are trying to demand their pound of flesh in terms of what they deserve already. And some might say, but Haruna thinks otherwise. There are some who have argued that it is not always a revenue situation. It is rather scaling back or cutting down on expenditure. So if you're not raising more revenue, what do? you cut down on expenditure to ensure that you manage it. There are some who are also of the school of thought that, you know something, let's raise more revenue and we can meet our financing obligations. So it's a quite interesting debate in terms of what can be done to deal with that situation. You need to use this mid-year review of estimate to send signal to your development partners, the IMF, and also those creditors that you are committed to fiscal prudence. So we will be seeing to see whether he can indeed implement all those things he's been talking about in terms of, one, cutting down on expenditure in an election year, and also ensuring that these projects are finished on time going into election quickly.
Julius, let me do one more interview with Honorable Kwame Kuma from Kintampo North. Honorable, what are your own expectations of this mid-year budget review? If you can just get down here. What your own expectation of the mid-year budget review, the presentation that's going to be made today?
Thank you for this opportunity. I salute the people of Kintampo and Ghana for that matter. I'm very news for this opportunity. Hope, and effective hope. We expect that the budget should give us hope. Where we have gotten to, no good news from any corner. CITAC has been on strike. Now we are even forced, if the letter have chance, it's anything to go by. Say they are threatening not to give them their July salary. Is it the way to go? What reasons brought about the strike? As Education Select Committee member, we had the opportunity to call them, trying to meet them. Parliament, as a body, in a closed-door meeting, met the Education Minister and the Employment Minister. They did explain and assured us on this floor that they had amicably settled whatever the grievance. So for me, today, to cite a letter going around saying that they are not going to pay them for July, I was shocked. Our people say you can always force a donkey to go to the riverside, but you can't force it to drink water.
Yeah, but you see, government is telling them that get back to the classroom, let's continue negotiating. And you are not, and you are breaching the NLC's directives, then you are not earning your salary. It means the strike is illegal. And if you are going on the illegal strike, you don't have to earn your salary. You don't have to put that pressure on the finance minister who's trying to stabilize the economy to give in to quote-unquote unreasonable demand. It is why the economy is here. The government cannot keep giving in to unreasonable demands from labor when the economy is trying to build back better.
The most dangerous thing to do as a policy implementer is always to use the courts to be putting injunction on labor unions. There is that right to go on strike and to demand. There is that right. So for any simple reason, then before you hear, you say there's an embargo by way of injunction. That is what is not helping most of these negotiations. I am on record, not up to a week now, you were in this chamber. We engaged in closed-door meeting. The Minister of Education, first it was a question put by Honorable Dr. Clementa Park to the Minister of Education to come and answer why they were not honoring CITAC grievances. And he said it wasn't within his domain, it was the Employment Minister. We followed up. The Employment Minister and Education Minister all came together to meet us in a closed-door sitting. I was here. And the assurance was that they had settled they and CITAC this. So did the Minister of Employment and Education Minister come to deceive the whole of Parliament? Is that what it means?
Something you'll be pushing.
It's something we'll be pushing for answers. So for you to go, even that day, they insisted that they should assure, they should give a timeline. Honorable Dr. Clementa Park, that they should give a timeline. When are they honoring the so-called only for this letter to come out? It means we were deceived. It means we were deceived.
Right. Thank you very much, Honorable. We'll be looking forward to talking to you when the minister makes a presentation. And I'll get back to George, but the chamber is a bit filling up on the majority side. A number of NPP MPs now taking their seat. Dr. Kwekwe Free already seated. You know from yesterday, if you follow the news, he had this altercation with the Speaker of Parliament, asking that he be walked out. A number of the NPP MPs have been already taking their seat. But coming back to you, George, it appears one of the big issues the government would have to be dealing with 5 months to an election is demand from labor and all sort of people, roads, hospitals. demands for salary increments. And the government has a tight space within which to work. Where does the government get all that money from to honor those?
Kweku, I mean, one would say that these demands from organized labor didn't just sprang up yesterday. If it's about some of them actually has dragged over the years. Yesterday there was an argument about one laptop per teacher or something.
Yes.
These are things that have dragged over the years. I don't know whether as the year went on, they failed to capture those expenditure in the budget. And for me, the most important thing is that have those things been captured in the budget? If it has, then there's no cause for alarm. But it has not been captured in the budget, then it might be a problem here because, again, you are under a fund program. Look at how we've struggled to get a deal with the external and bilateral creditors. You need to use this mid-year review, you're reviewing the numbers to send signals to these bilateral creditors out there that, listen, you are committed to fiscal prudence. So if these things have been captured in the budget, then voila, there's no problem. But if it hasn't, then there's a big challenge. But again, if you go through, if you hear everyday report and if you go through the Auditor General's reports, and sometimes you see the waste, then you realize that they're also justified to push for their pound of flesh because we don't see in the report that government is tightening its belt. And therefore, we're also saying that, listen, these are things that we demand. If it's about conditions of service, we have negotiated this thing for a long time. It's an election year. It might be a very good time to press that angle to push government to the wall and ensure that you get your pound of flesh. So if it's captured in the budget, then no problem. But if it's not, then it's a real challenge.
But George, Labour has shown itself, it doesn't care whether it's captured in the budget or not. They just want it. And the thing about pressing for your pound of flesh is at what cost? At a cost that puts the economy back in the situation we found ourselves 2-3 years ago, and then it affects labor.
But Kweku, I get your concern. But if you read, I mean, forget about maybe Kweku Asante doing a report about certain corruption in a ministry. People don't know what goes into auditing an institution. It's not an easy work. So when the Auditor General's report comes out and it shows the waste things are being contested, then they also think that, well, after all, the economy is not struggling. We have to demand for what we are due as workers. Some of these things started way back, 2 years, 3 years. So I think that they think that the best opportunity to push for this thing is during an election year. But again, if you argue or look at the moral angle, then you also want to argue that, well, listen, do you want to demand something and later run down the economy? But again, certain actions of government, again, has not helped the situation because they think that, listen, I need to demand my pound of flesh and get it paid.
Let me talk to you about the political economy. The government is also looking to break in the eight. And it means satisfying the demands of the people. It means completing the Agenda 111 hospitals. It means completing the schools that you've started. And normally election year, that is how we see budget overruns. There's the big budget deficits right after the election year because the government wants to spend to win the election. Dr. Mohamed Amin Lamte, as we know him, is a shrewd politician, is a shrewd economist.
Amin Adam,
Dr. Amin Adam, I should say. Do you sense that he's going to stick to the commitment he has made? In several press conferences he has spoken, he has said he's going to stick to the budget. He's going to ensure there are no overruns going into the election.
There can always be an assurance. But the reality when you see that people are telling you that if you don't do X, Y, Z for me, I'm going to vote against you. In those previous public engagements and press conference, he gave us the assurance that he's gotten the approval of the president to keep the taps closed in terms of any expenditure that has not been captured in the budget. So if we should go by its words alone, we should be excited that based on what he's saying, they are going to stick to the budget. But there's always a challenge. The polls are
ministers will be pressuring you.
The polls they are not going in favor of this current government, whichever polls you want to look at. Can there be a situation where if they spend, but I'm saying that you can spend, but it should be expenditure that has been planned, it has been captured. If it's roads, was that money captured for this? Or you're going to overrun the economy and then you come back again having to clean up. So it will be a difficult year being under a fund program and then also dealing with the demand from the electorate, from colleague ministers who are doing things that have not been approved by the House and all the rest. It is a big challenge. He would try his best, but again, let's see what happens. time will tell. After July, after September, let's see whether they will stick to what has been approved in the budget.
I mean, when you're entering the last quarter and the pressure is getting high and the election is coming up, that is when you really stick to the commitment of government. The chamber is filling up gradually, not as much as you would have thought. I mean, if you look at the time
now... So we've not seen any member of parliament. They said they are in the coffee shop.
They said they are at the coffee shop. But the coffee shop is not a chamber.
Yes.
You expect them to come in, and normally
does
the
it
Speaker
give
of Parliament
that
will be giving that indication.
Yeah.
And it tells you that maybe there's a certain lack of information that has been trickling in.
Yeah.
Because, of course, these two minority MPs you're speaking to, giving us the indication that they probably will have to show up.
Yeah.
But normally, you would have seen at least one or two of them seated. Not all of them want to be at the coffee shop. In fact, if all 137 NDC MPs show up, they can't fill the coffee shop. The coffee shop is not
even about 100.
Yes. So at least you'll be expecting to see a few of them there.
Maybe.
George, this week and last week, concerns had been shared on the floor about the District Assembly's Common Fund.
Yeah.
Honorable Podu, a number of minority MPs saying that they're about to go on a long vacation. They need their common fund to be able to go and deliver on their mandate.
Yeah.
And they are demanding that. There's a certain indication that the minority will be using this as a protest to pressure the finance minister.
If you remember, there was a time during Setequest time that the presentation was delayed because
several hours.
Some members of parliament were demanding something, and until that thing was done, he couldn't come here to present the budget. Yes. So maybe, listen, I think that from what we are picking up, maybe it is true that they might not come or they will delay proceedings going forward. It's supposed to have started at 10.
Yeah.
As you speak right now, nothing is showing that in the next 30 minutes something will happen.
11:18 now, and it's delaying. I mean, clearly, if you look at the State of the Nation address in February, we had the president coming in, proceedings delayed for so long because the minority were making certain demands. Ultimately, they even said they were going to boycott until the then former former president
John Mahama
actually went in there to try and talk to them. So as we begin to wrap up to hand over back to Kojo Yankson and co to take it over, we'll be looking for interesting to see whether or not the minority will turn up in the chamber. It is currently all 137 seats empty, the majority seats filling up, a number of ministers coming up. And George,
but also
Kojo Yankson is taking over. Your last words.
Well, my last words is that I'm looking forward to this presentation, the bit about what the minister said, the fiscal prudence. Also, let us not forget the person that is Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam. This will be his first major assignment presenting to Parliament. Let's see where he goes around. It appears that he cuts across both sides in terms of their personal relationship compared to Mr. Kenofriata. So let's see how things will shape up in the House during the presentation, whether there will be cut calls and how he'll go about this whole presentation today in Parliament.
Right, Kojo, so we'll be back here when MP starts sitting and the proceedings begin, but you can take it up in the studio. But the situational report is that not a single NDC MP has taken their seat. Almost 40 minutes to hit midday. A number of IPP MPs have come in, and it's be interesting to see if we get a confirmation of what we are hearing, that the NDC MPs may be tempted to boycott this proceeding, Kojo.
Intrigue in Parliament. Thank you very much, Kweku and George, for bringing us all the way up to date with the situation there. Of course, this is our continued coverage of the delivery of the mid-year review to Parliament by the Finance Minister. Of course, the latest update is that not a single NDC Member of Parliament is seated in the House. We did see a few of them. We spoke to a couple of them on the premises, but not a single one of them is as yet seated. Suggestions being that discussion is being had about whether or not to even participate in today's proceedings. We will keep you updated on that development as it unfolds, but it's almost midday and we still don't have the minority members seated on the floor of Parliament. So stay with us for that. Of course, this is our live coverage, which is on all of our platforms, Joy News, Joy FM, and all our social media platforms as well. If you want to interact with us, use the hashtag Joy News or Joy Mid-Year Review as you share your thoughts with us. And of course, if you are watching our YouTube channel, don't forget to take a minute to subscribe. All right, well, Obviously, Professor, and by the way, let me introduce Professor Peter Quartey, who joins us. He runs ISA at the University of Ghana. Prof, it's good to have you. Thank you for making the time. Good morning.
Good.
Indeed. Of course, interesting developments so far. And I've been talking to Wisdom here in the studio. Wisdom, of course, is from Deloitte. He's one of the associate managers on tax. Prof, let's look a little bit more broadly at what we were told at the beginning of, well, at the end of 2023, coming into 2024 by Ken Ofori-Atta. There was an expectation that, especially on the issue of taxes, which we've been discussing earlier, that government was going to ramp up the collection of existing taxes. So we heard about all of the plans they had in place for property tax, for example. But now, over more than halfway into the year, what is your assessment of government's ability to collect revenue so far?
Well, if you judge by what GRA is telling us, they said they have exceeded their half-year target. But then, I mean, these are nominal figures, so it will be good to look at in real terms what this means if you factor in inflation. In terms of collecting the taxes, essentially you mentioned property taxes. I must say it was quite disappointing to learn that despite all the efforts at collecting property taxes, we've really gone back to where we started. Houses were assessed digitally. You can go online and assess your property rate or how much you're supposed to pay. It looks like the company doing this was not made to continue. Also, there's been some unusual tension between the assemblies and the Ministry of Finance, because the Ministry of Finance was collecting these taxes or helping the assemblies collect this tax. So, Kofi, I'm sorry to say that we are back to square one. They are giving us guesstimates as property rates to collect, not proper assessment of our properties for us to pay property rates. And therefore, we are not getting much property taxes as one would have envisaged. But having said that, I think the platform has been set. So going forward, I expect them to speed up the process so we could collect more property taxes. With the mid-year budget, I don't expect to see higher taxes. I expect us to be more efficient in collecting whatever we set out to do. When the taxes are already too high, I just checked a ticket cost, for instance, and about 38% is airport tax. If you haven't checked, those who travel, check airport tax, calculate the tax as a proportion of the total amount you pay for your ticket. 38%. I mean, this is just too much. And I think we need to, perhaps we have to have a conversation on what actually goes into these airport taxes and where does the money go to. And so are other forms of taxes. But let's make efficient use of the systems, the digital systems, and collect the existing taxes. I believe we'll be better off than introducing new one. That distorts production, that distorts the private sector's activities.
Prof, stay with us. I want to bring this issue that you've raised about taxes to Wisdom, who's here with us in the studio. I mean, this is your wheelhouse. That example given by Prof about airport taxes making up about 36% of the price build-up on the cost of a ticket, the cost of a flight. I mean, is it? I mean, look, is it that there is absolutely no leeway here? Will government not actually perhaps make more if they were able to make the prices more affordable by managing the tax component?
Well, yeah, very good points that you raised. And to add to what Prof said, so Prof talked about efficiency in collecting our taxes. So what I will add would be how we collect our taxes sustainably. You've seen that in the past we've had sudden increases in rates. We've had a sudden increase in VAT rate coupled with the levies. That takes us to 21.9% VAT only. And then there are these examples like the airport tax. So that is high. And over time, what that does is that you do not have the industry having the leeway to produce, to be able to make these taxes or to work in an environment that their cost is sustainable. So it is difficult. Government finds itself in a very difficult situation, but we also have to make collection of the taxes very efficient and sustainable. One way, and I consult for industry, I consult for the private sector a lot, and the private sector will tell you we are willing to comply, but how much cost do we need to incur when it comes to things like tax audits, when it comes to cost of compliance, etc. So when the modern way of looking at collecting tax, especially for big businesses, is cooperative tax compliance, where you are not, they are not complying because of the threat of audits and sanctions, but they are complying from a cooperative perspective. So you have large businesses investing in compliance and also having the leeway to operate so that you can collect the taxes sustainably, and you have these businesses as partners in revenue collection. And I believe that's a more sustainable way of collecting and administering revenue, especially for categories of businesses that give so much to the kitty when it comes to tax revenue and also employ and contribute so much to the economy overall.
Now, Prof, I want us to now zoom out a little bit, look at the big picture. This is what we're expecting. We're not expecting any new taxes. We're not expecting for the call for a supplementary budget, so no extra spending, right? But already we're behind on our bills. We're unable to foot our bills. We can't really borrow, certainly not at any rate that makes sense. Yet we're in an election year. We're told that government is going to talk about cost-cutting measures. But if we are to take them on their record, cost-cutting is not a strength of theirs. So, I mean, is it adding up? Are we really going to end this year better than the position we are in today, mathematically?
Well, yes, we are not borrowing, but then you also know that we have signed some agreements with bondholders, Eurobond, international creditors, that is going to free some resources for us. So some of the debt that we have to pay, some of the interest payments, etc., have been reduced, and that would provide a lot of savings for us. Some of the payment has also been rescheduled, so over a longer term period, and therefore we are not going to pay as much now than we would have done. So all of this will bring out some level of savings. And of course, going by what GRA is telling us, if normally revenues don't come in during the first quarter and start building around the second quarter. So if we have exceeded our first half target, then there is optimism that in the second half we'll certainly achieve more. And therefore, we'll be able, in terms of revenue, we'll be able to get the needed revenue. It's the expenditure side that we are not too sure, as you all know, because in our election year, we haven't done well at all. We have a track record for reneging on our targets when it comes to the fiscal deficit. Every election year, we exceed. Even during 2016, when we had IMF with us, we really went beyond our target. So the political business cycle, as we call it, it's always been with us. And I'm not sure how we can overcome this year. I mean, the Minister of Finance has been very assuring in this respect that they are not going to go beyond what has been projected. So hopefully that will happen. But I think the savings that we are making from our debt would provide some leverage for us to complete some of the projects that are hanging. We've also seen some new bilateral donors, some multilateral donors providing cheaper sources of credit, and that would all help to finance some of the infrastructure projects.
Now, let's stay with the big picture. And Wisdom, look, we keep hearing the GRA talking about ramping up collections and, targeting those who have been escaping the tax net and this, that. I mean, I'm wondering, honestly, what is the problem? We have now instituted the Ghana card so that, an overwhelming majority of Ghanaians can be identified and in many cases located because we have a digital address system as well. Yeah. Really, what is the impediment in the way of the GRA from bringing more people into the tax net?
Well, you make the point very correctly. We have the Ghana card, so I would expect that we have taxpayers, and we are told that we have over 7.9 million taxpayers registered, but we have a very small fraction of that number on the tax system paying taxes, and that is a concern. I would think that we may not have looked at the architecture from a broad perspective, because if you still have database sitting in the GRA and other authorities yet to speak to each other, I believe that it's because our databases are not speaking to one another. That's why we've not been able to crack it. But all is not lost. I believe once we have the data and we are in a data world, we should be able to have that linkage between is it DVLA, is it the GRA, is it the NCA, is it the EC, so that these sources of data can speak to one another and allow us to have the linkages where you have a transaction that goes into your bank account. The taxman should be able to link the receipts that you have into your bank account with the tax returns that you file, because that's also online. And an issue that we have been brooding over, but I believe that we need to take the bold steps forward, is around the informal sector that World Economics estimate to be around 35.8%. That is a huge number of the GDP we have. Obviously, we cannot have the formal sector continue paying taxes, and that is where you have complaints around the same businesses and individuals continuing to pay the taxes. We will need to crack the informal sector, the opacity in the informal sector, and find ways that we can extract tax revenue. I must say that there are initiatives in the fall that would tackle that, but the speed with which these initiatives will tackle that is something that would need to increase. For instance, the VAT e-invoicing system, which will ensure that every single VAT invoice you issue would have a data trail, audit trail within the GRA system, so we can say company A, enterprise A, and we like using the enterprises. So so and so enterprise, you issue invoice for 1,000 cedi. How much VAT are you bringing to the government? And in addition to the VAT, how much income tax are you paying? We cannot allow these pockets of businesses to go under the radar, because together they are a big chunk of the economy. And I think another area would be tackling the linkages that are so clear. For instance, smuggling. Smuggling in a large part championed also by the informal sector. And we've seen the reports over time. We've seen the GRA soups getting these smugglers, but how consistent is it? How are we building our systems to speak together, speak to one another, to be able to tackle smuggling from the root causes? I believe that as we work on efficiency when it comes to tax administration, we would also need to mend our net, really, so that we do not have these leakages being a big part of revenue loss. And once we are managing our net, our tax net, and also being efficient in collection of taxes, we can have a better spread of the burden of taxation on individuals as well as on businesses. Then it comes back to my point around sustainability. If you increase voluntary compliance, whether it's from a household basis or a business basis, you then have a sustainable revenue collection system that can really champion your pursuit of increased revenue collection and better fiscal space for what we need to do as a country.
We're joined by Seth Chumakwabwa, who, of course, runs the Association of Ghana Industries, the AGI. Mr. Akwabwa, what a pleasure to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo. Nice meeting you.
Yes, always a pleasure. Of course, we're anticipating the mid-year review, but so far our conversation has centered generally around taxation. I think it's a very important area in which I'd like to hear from you. So, zero rate VAT on locally manufactured African prints for 2 more years. Zero rate VAT on locally produced sanitary pads. Import duty waivers for the raw materials that go into sanitary pads. Extended zero rate of VAT on locally assembled vehicles for another 2 years. A waiver on import duties of electric vehicles for public transportation, which is to go on for about 8 years. Exemptions on the importation of agricultural machinery, equipment and inputs and medical consumables, raw materials for the pharmaceutical industry, all getting exemptions on importation. They've waived import duties on semi-knocked down and completely knocked down electric vehicles as well. This was all announced in November last year. We're in July 2024. Has Ghana's industries benefited from these tax policies?
Well, thank you, Kojo, and good morning to your viewers. Yes, indeed, the tax issues have always been a major area of concern to industry. And we've all talked about how we can create jobs, how we can contribute to the development of the economy. And we know that if industries are doing well, they would create more jobs and they would contribute a lot more to the economy. And therefore, whatever effort we have to make it to support industrial growth. And tax issues in some countries is a major tool for supporting local industrial development. So some of the tax exemptions you mentioned were extensively articulated by AGI as representative of industry. Some of them have been taken on board. Others have not been taken on board. We still have a lot of issues with some of the taxes. Those that have been taken on board, it's helping industry, no doubt about it. But what we keep saying is that for industry to grow and perform, a couple of things must happen simultaneously. So the tax issues are one, but beyond that, other things must work for it to get the full benefit. So if we take the VAT exemption on textiles, for example, this was already there, and it got to a point where it was ending, and we asked for extension of it, and it was granted. So once it was granted, it has helped to stabilize the textile industries. And we keep saying, if you remember, in the past, the textile industries was booming. We were employing over 30,000 people. Today, we employ less than 3,000 people. Only 3 companies are operating. One of them, who was operating about half capacity, today has even closed down. And only a few are doing well. So they have a serious challenge because of unfair competition. That has nothing to do with even capacity to produce and compete. It's because when they produce, their designs are copied, come into the country, and because they are coming as smuggled goods, they don't pay the duties, they don't pay the taxes. So they come in cheaply and compete with those that are producing here. And that's the reason why we ask for some of these exemptions. And interestingly, when you do it, invariably, it even helps to benefit the government's own programs. And the example I'm giving as the zero VAT on tax. And in the first instance, when it was given, and we did the calculation at the end of the period, we noticed that companies that were making losses, and for which reason they were not paying corporate taxes, when the zero VAT was implemented, at the end of it, they were now making profit, and the corporate tax they paid was actually higher than the VAT they would have paid. So you actually shifted the tax from pre-production stage to post-production. And that kind of analysis always helps industry. So a lot of things are happening. Some of them are good for the industry, but there are others that need to come on board to make it complete for the industry to strive. So some of the taxes you've mentioned, yes, they are right taxes, but they still have a lot to deal with. For example, the straight levy that we've talked about, the a further exemption for diapers and some specific products that we think we have adequate local capacity.
Yeah.
Some of the you'll be surprised if you take oils, for example, the oil we consume. Just 2 companies can produce the whole country's needs. If you take a product like diapers, the one company production is twice as much the country needs. So if it doesn't export, it can't stay in business. If you take the cables, for example, you have 3 big companies that are producing cables in the country: Tropical Cable, Nesans, and Railroad. And today there are a few others that have been added. Their capacity is way beyond what government actually, like Ghana, actually needs. So when we say support local production, and there's a complaint that, oh, do we even have the capacity? Sometimes we are not looking at the specific product that we have capacities. And for those ones, we should be strategic about it. Whether it's tax incentives, whether we use tax as a strategic tool, let's do it and support this industry to survive and then grow. Then it becomes import substitution. We know the challenge we have with our currency. We are always, because we are importing so much, there's always pressure on our city. We are not generating adequate local volumes, and therefore we have to always import. And when you are importing, you are putting pressure on your city. So one way to curb it is to support local industrial growth. And we need to pick this strategic product. That's why in AGR submissions, apart from the general issue about the economy that we talk about, we also emphasize on specific products that we think we have strategic opportunity to deal with. And if we succeed in doing so, we'll support the growth of the economy in a big way.
Right. I'm going to stay with you for this one because I've heard from my other guest on it. The rumor, the whisper, is that we might see the removal of the e-levy and the COVID levy. Tell me what that would do for Ghana industries.
Well, the COVID levy, we think that has outlived its purpose. We all know we've gone out of the COVID period. And indeed, on the taxes, I'll just introduce this quickly and then I'll come back to your issue. If you have the bill of entry, a typical importation of raw material, we've done our calculations. The value of the product you are importing, at the end of clearing, you pay about 52.2% as taxes.
More than half?
Yes, more than half. So, and that includes the e-levy. We have itemized it. There's so many of them. If I have time, I can take you through that. You add the import VAT, so many things, the COVID levy, the NHL. If you put it all together, you're talking about 52.something%. So the COVID levy is one of it. And we think that if you want to reduce taxes and make businesses more competitive, there are some taxes that are not impacting much, or at least the name alone connotes something else. So take it out. So I think that hint you've gotten, I hope it happens and it's good. Now, you talked about the e-levy and then the e-levy also being taken out. Well, for the e-levy, I think that right from the onset, it had its own challenges. And there were a lot of talk about it. For whatever reason, it didn't work well as expected. And as was just mentioned, if you had an e-levy that was expecting to generate about 6.something billion and we're generating less than $1 billion, it means the real intention probably has not been achieved. And if it hasn't been achieved, can you recalibrate it and look at the whole tax regime? And I don't think we should just look at these 2 taxes. We should look at all the taxes together and make it very progressive. Pick the ones that we think, we can't avoid paying taxes. We need the taxes to develop the country. Nobody can avoid it. But let's structure the taxes in a way that supports local businesses to grow, that does not become inimical or an obstacle, so that they can expand. And as they expand, you can actually tax them at the end, because government has practically 25% shares in every business, because we pay 25% corporate tax. Why don't you let me generate the profit and tax me at the end of it? But if all the taxes come at the beginning, it makes me uncompetitive. I'm not able to sell much, and we have imports competing with us so strongly. Today, we have Continental Free Trade Agreement. So we are opening our doors. Goods are coming from all of Africa. Some have better capacity than we do. And once they enter, duty-free, quota-free. Yeah. Only the transportation cost. So if they are slightly efficient, your businesses are out of are out of business. So we need to structure it in a way that support local industry. So these two we've mentioned are important to deal with. But for me, let's look at the larger picture of the whole tax regime and construct it in a way that is more progressive and supportive of industry. If you have time, you can go into some of the specific taxes that we think that can be done away with or can be restructured a little bit to support local industrial growth.
Yeah, we will come back and see if we can deal with those. But I want to bring back Prof. Peter Quartey. Now, Prof, in November, when Ken Ofori-Atta read what now appears to be his last budget statement to Parliament, he said, and I quote, "I want to stress at this juncture that Ghana has paid its dues, has turned the corner, and getting back on track." This became a controversial statement. Debates were raised about whether indeed Ghana had turned the corner as of November 2023. But now it's July 2024. Has Ghana turned the corner? Right, I think we need to work to reconnect with Professor Peter Quartey. But I'll hear my other panelists on this. Wisdom, have we turned the corner?
It's a difficult one to say, but when you talk about turning the corner as full recovery, I think that the signs are clear. The data, the situation we are in is clear. I would say we are on the path of recovery, and we would need to keep focus on recovery and not say we've turned the corner. That would be my opinion. And it comes in various forms. We are coming out of 2022, skyrocketing inflation, depreciation of the cedi. We've seen inflation going down, but we would need to keep having that go down. When I do transactions internationally and I talk about inflation in the region of 22%, that is still high. That is still high. And AGI talked about competing with others. So we are not just competing in our space, we are competing internationally. We will need to have our inflation going down. Something close to single digits would be what I believe businesses would have as a sustainable inflation rate. And that is tied to its twin, the depreciation of the cedi. Yeah. We will need to have our currency being stronger so that there can be confidence in the economy, so that businesses, we spend a lot when it comes to wooing investors into the country. We spend resources, money, we spend time, and we spend a lot of our policies directed at foreign direct investment. We cannot do without foreign direct investments coming in. They bring in money, they bring in technology, and also help us increase our skills. So we cannot do without them. But it's about the balance. Now, on one side, when we woo investors to come into Ghana, after we've done that, we would also need to make sure that we have a stable currency that keeps their confidence. That in that confidence is tangible. It comes from the confidence to keep your retained earnings, to reinvest into the country. That will lead to expansion of industry. That will lead to additional employment coming through. And that would lead to additional money getting into the pockets of people. If your foreign investors do not have that confidence and they are eager to repatriate their dividends, which they have every right to do, you then have increased demand on your currency, and you have your currency depreciating at the rate that we've seen it depreciating in the recent past. So overall, I would say that we are on the path of recovery. We would require focus to be on that path. We would need to avoid the so-called election year case to be on that path, so that the next fiscal year, 2025, we can have a better grounding from 2024 to have our policies come out, whether it's the tax fiscal policy, whether it's the monetary policy, and the overall policies that will ensure that we are then having our industries in the shape that they should be, and having all sectors working in a particular way that leads us to turning the corner, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seth, this issue of turning the corner, right? I mean, you could think about it as full recovery, as wisdom characterizes it. Or you could think about it as the worst is over. So we've hit the bottom, we've turned the corner, and from this point onwards, it can only get better, even if we're not there yet. Would you say that's where we are? Have we hit the bottom? Can things not get any worse than this? Can we look forward to improvement only from this point onwards?
Yeah, thank you. Well, seriously speaking, I think that the latter of your statement is what I'll go with, that we've hit the bottom and we are gradually getting out of the bad situation. It cannot be worse than this. And we can't afford any situation worse than this. And therefore, I think strongly that we must consider the turning the corner to mean that we reached the lowest ebb and now coming out of it. We shouldn't go any further than this. So I want to believe that is what it is. But turning the corner does not mean that we've arrived. It does not mean we've reached a stage we want to reach. We haven't at all. But we have indeed turned the corner, because by the definition of turning the corner, you go into a very negative situation, and you reach a certain critical point, and then you turn. So that's what the turning the corner means. And as far as that is concerned, indeed, we've turned the corner. But that does not mean recovery. We have not fully recovered at all. If you look at the debt overhang on us as a country, if you look at the fact that we are still under IMF arrangement, there's a lot of restrictions on so many things, expenditure has to be cut, and a lot of controls have to come in for government business to run and for private businesses to run. I know that some of the tax impositions that we have today, it is because government is compelled to do so because they must have a certain revenue target as part of the IMF arrangement. So you really are not of yourself. And clearly, we are not in a position where we can say we can just do things the way we want. So we have not really reached the state of recovery. But we need to gradually work towards it. And I always believe that as a country, we must have hope. As people, we must have hope. So if we don't have hope, then that's the end of things. And therefore, we work towards achieving better results in the coming years, working with IMF arrangement, coming out of it, and seeing proper growth. But it all requires strategy, and the right approach so that we can actually achieve the sustainable production and sustainable development that we want. We don't want, you see, what businesses are not happy with is the flip-flop of the economy. Occasionally, you see improvement, a bit of stability, then it drops, especially on the macroeconomic level. This year, the experience we had, actually, it was very unpleasant, where CD started depreciating again. The inflation was going up, when we thought that from the beginning of this year and in latter part of last year with IMF intervention, we had achieved significant stability. Then suddenly we started seeing this situation again. So what we would like to see is stability that is sustainable. And whatever it will take to have that stability, it is crucial. That is why I believe people have talked about government managing its expenditure well, so that we stay within reasonable expenditure levels. We stay within the revenue that we are mobilizing, so that your expenditure is in tandem with the revenue you are mobilizing. And in that case, you have the stability achieved. If you don't do that, and anytime there's instability, businesses are the worst affected. Because raw material, for example, is heavily imported into the country. We have not developed our value chains. I think we can come to the strategies later. There are so many things we must do to make the industry work better. But the very first thing, what is most crucial, is having that economic stability, the macroeconomic stability, so people can plan. Investors, when they are coming into the country, they are looking at the long-term horizon. If I'm investing this much, what will be my return on investment? How long will it take? But if you have an economy that flip-flops, once in a while it's improved, stability is achieved, then suddenly it drops, you can't plan anything. So I think that is what we should try and avoid and help a sustainable recovery.
Right.
I mean, having a change overnight may not happen, and we cannot expect that suddenly everything will be so perfect. But at least you must see signs of growth which is sustainable. And I think people can plan with it and make progress.
Now, I want to hear both of you on this one. Let's talk about what we're expecting to hear in the delivery of the mid-year review, the specifics. Now, we'll start with some of the targets, right? So we heard their target for inflation. We heard their target for CD depreciation. These two things in particular certainly affect industry. Let's talk about what you're expecting to hear. You know, this is how businesses plan. You look into the future, you try and predict, based on the events you are expecting to occur, what will happen to your cedi, for example. Let's stick with that as our example for this conversation, the value of the cedi. You look into the future and you predict that based on these upcoming events, the cedi's value will either strengthen or weaken. Things like having inflows from foreign sources can strengthen your cedi. Things like Christmas can weaken your cedi. So how is the AGI forecasting the rest of 2024? Are we going to see further depreciation? Are you planning for further depreciation? Or do you expect to see some strengthening of our currency?
Well, I'll tell you that for every business, I mean, every good business that is planning, they plan with historical information, and on the basis of that, make some predictions. And I think in an economy like Ghana, where things sometimes changes a little bit or even becomes so bad, you cannot plan that between now and the end of the year, you wouldn't have any depreciation at all. But then you will plan within a certain range. Right. And the range that people have is not that high range. So if you see inflation increasing a little bit within, say, 5% thereabouts, then it's manageable. If you see the cedi depreciating up to about, say, 2, 3, 4, 5%, perhaps it can be manageable because people will plan with that in mind. But where it goes way off, then it throws every plan out of gear. So the question you ask, are we confident that between now and end of the year, we're going to have that stability? We are looking at a lot of parameters. We're looking at the fact that with the IMF intervention and with a bit of restrictions on government, we should stay within reasonable expenditure levels, and therefore we shouldn't throw things out of gear. The challenge we have, which we have experienced in the past, and as I said, if you are planning, you plan with the past in mind. The challenge we've had in the past is that every election year, we balloon our expenditure, and it's across government, and it's been experienced over the years, and this is an election year. So can we be so sure that at the end of the day, we will not overly increase our expenditure and throw everything out of gear? That is highly dependent on government. Our expectation is that this must be managed in a way that doesn't throw everything out of gear. That's why I'm happy to hear that government says, I'm not bringing a supplementary budget. I'm not going to ask for more money. I'm not going to, because anytime government is asking for more money, it's more taxes that is coming in. It's more income that has been generated at all costs without looking at the expenditure side. So if they are not asking for more resources, then perhaps there's going to be a management of the expenditure so that we stay within budget. And if we do that, and other things are managed properly, then we are sure that by the end of the year, even if there will be some changes in the cedi exchange levels, it will be within reasonable limits that people can plan and work with. So a few percentage here and there, plus and minus, can be managed. And I think that is what businesses are planning with. If it goes beyond that, I can tell you, the situation will be worse than we've experienced before, and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, we certainly don't want anything worse than what we've seen so far. I wonder what your thoughts are on, your expectations of the targets as we've been given in November. Are you expecting them to be reviewed positively or otherwise? And I mean, you can start with the value of the cedi.
Right. So you can look at this from different angles. Obviously, we are all waiting to see how the numbers are from an official source. How have we fared? But then the indicators, we can see the indicators. Prof made mention of the GRA's announcement that we've exceeded targets, revenue target for the first half, although that is nominal, but it is still good news that we can hold on to. The information that we are not getting supplementary budgets, that is also a good indicator that government is not asking for more money to spend beyond what has been budgeted for. So those are indicators that we can glean from until we get the official numbers coming through, and as well as the GDP growth target. So we projected to grow at 2.8%. The IMF recently announced a revision of that forecast to 3.1%. That is also positive. So it looks like the indicators, at least the interim indicators, are pointing to we staying at least within budgets or doing a little better than we projected to do. So we can only hope that these come through as the official numbers confirm what these indicators are telling us. And as my colleagues on the panel have also mentioned, we would need to keep within expenditure to manage things like inflation. Inflation, we targeted end-of-year inflation to be 15%. We are hovering around 22.3% currently.
Will we make it down to 15?
Big question. But what are the indicators? If government will not spend so much more, we do not balloon our expenditure, then we can't be working towards something. And I like what Mr. Chumesi, I believe, talked about, that we would need to keep hopes alive. We would need to have hopes that things will get better. And with that posture, it comes with the culture across the nation and the posture that we bring to the table from the government side and also from the citizenry. So if we can keep expenditure within check, then we can be making these targets. And I'm happy that the interim indicators are showing that we are on track. And I talked about on a path to recovery. Can we get more of these positives? Because we badly need these positives. We will need to have these positives coming through so that we get the confidence of the business community and as well as confidence of the Ghanaian. Our young ones are looking for greener pastures outside. We would need to be here to build our country as well. So I'm all for the positive indicators, but then from a business point of view, it looks like so far so good, and we hope the official numbers confirm these, and more importantly, we get some more assurances from the budget reading around how we can work towards the targets for 2024, because certainty is a currency that businesses hold in very high esteem, and we need that certainty.
Yeah, we certainly do. Speaking of businesses and certainty, Seth, let me ask you, how are Ghana industries doing? How are we doing halfway into the year? I mean, are we seeing mass business shutdowns? Are we seeing jobs, being lost? Are we seeing expansion? Are we seeing people taking opportunities in these unprecedented times?
In mass job losses, there will be mass closure of businesses. I wouldn't say so. I think that if you compare this year to last year, until recent challenges we had with the macro, stability was reasonable. Of course, it does not mean that we are doing so well in terms of our economic environment. But if you compare to the previous years, in fact, 2022, when we had all this crisis, and now we've had some reasonable stability. For this year, I wouldn't say it's been that bad. It's improved quite significantly. But it does not also mean expansion. Expansion is not being achieved much because businesses grow on the basis of demand. And the demand is also dependent on the economy. The economy, when it's good, people have more purchasing power, they can procure more, and then business must produce to fill that space. As producers are producing, they need more services, and all works together to grow the economy. And we all know that the economy hasn't grown that fast. Even though this year, if you look at the targets, it's done a little bit better than some time back. And therefore, expansion is not taking place. But for me, that should also be a worry to us, because we have not stopped giving birth. We've not stopped having children coming out of our universities. Every year we are expanding the job needs of our people. So you have hundreds of thousands coming, at least 200,000 or so coming from our tertiary institutions every year, seeking for jobs. So even if you're able to stabilize, it's not enough. You need to be able to stabilize and expand so you can absorb more. And that is the kind of growth we should be having all the time. And as a developing country, if you are not achieving 7% thereabout consistently for years, then your migration from one level to a higher level is going to be difficult. And therefore, we should be concerned that we are not expanding. But I would say as for expansion, I'm not really seeing expansion taking place. A few businesses may come in here and there, but most of the big businesses I know, at best, they are keeping the same numbers. As for reducing numbers and creating unemployment, that's the last thing a business would do, because you see, you train your workers, you have core staff, you have people who work with you, and you don't want to lose them. So before a business will say it's gotten to a point, let people go home, then it's reached a very critical state that they can't do anything about it. They can't survive on the basis of the numbers.
Right.
So that's not they would rather lose all the profits, even if they will break even, to keep the business going. So that is what is happening. People are not really cutting down jobs, but I must say that they are struggling. The industry generally is not performing that well. That I would say. We need to have industry performing better than we are experiencing now, especially because of the growth in numbers who are in need of jobs. And therefore, we need to be strategic about it. If you look at the various sectors, there are certain sectors we are not performing well at all because of influx of imports. And the sad thing is that some of these influx can be curtailed. And it's all because we are not managing and policing and enforcing our regulations well enough. And I gave a few examples, and I can give more, of the cable industries. Suddenly, there's influx of imported cables that is hitting and hurting our local manufacturers. So most of them are not producing the volumes that they want to produce. And I mean, they have a plan, and they are never able to achieve it. We are seeing that in the flour industry. Suddenly, there's some from a particular country, a surge of imports from that country. And sometimes the worst part of it is that the prices some of them are selling it are ridiculously low, and you wonder how they can produce and sell at that price, even if you're importing them. The cable is a typical example, and it's one of the inputs we made to the government. The copper, which is the basic raw material for cable production, is sold at the international market. So if it's an internationally traded commodity, we all know what the price is. How come some of the products can enter the country and be sold, taking account of that international price, add the insulation, what is the plastic on it, make profit, send to the country, pay duties, and sell at such ridiculously low prices? We've taken some of this into the International Trade Commission, which they are working on. But it's a sad thing. So if you go to the market today, a lot of them are coming in like that. The other aspect of it, which is also sad, is the fact that some of them are coming as substandard products. We know the effort Ghana Standards Authority is making, and I commend them for that. But we need to strengthen their capacity to police some of these products. So flour is coming in. There's been a lot of complaints about diaper producers, substandard products that are not meeting the local standard. Even the locally defined standard, we are not meeting it, and they are coming into the country. The oil producers, the cooking oil producers have mentioned the same thing. A lot of them coming into the country. Quality is an issue. It's a health issue to us. But our capacity to manage and control these is a major challenge. So some of them, it's not so much even macro issues. Of course, the macro issues are important. I've talked about it. But there are other things we can do. Enforcement of and compliance with local regulations, and ensuring that people who are importing these items are paying the right duties, they are going through the right process, and there's fairness in the market. In that case, I can assure you, there are a lot of companies in Ghana can compete. There are areas that they need support, but there are areas all they need is fairness in the market, and they can actually produce so that we can have growth in industry as we are expecting.
Yeah. If you're watching or listening, this is our live coverage of the presentation of the mid-year review budget to the Parliament of Ghana. Finance Minister is expected to do that shortly. Currently, the latest update from Parliament is that we are still awaiting the arrival of several members of Parliament, particularly those on the minority side. We'll give you updates as and when we receive them. But the pictures you're seeing right now on the screen show that all the occupation in Parliament is on the majority side. We're going to take some messages from our partners, and when we come back, the analysis is going to take another leap forward as we start looking at some of the specifics of what we were told in November and the reality of what's happening in July 2024. Stay with us. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of the delivery of the mid-year budget review statement to Parliament by the Finance Minister. We're expecting it to happen sometime soon. The latest from Parliament is that the minority members of Parliament are yet to be seated in the chamber. You can see on your screens images of the Chamber of Parliament, and right here on the floor, all those who are seated so far happen to be on the majority side. The minority side seems largely empty, and we are waiting to find out whether indeed there has been a decision on the part of the minority to participate or not to participate in today's proceedings. So stay with us. We will bring you that right here on Joy News and, of course, on Joy 99.7 FM and all of our social media platforms. And you can also enjoy this on our YouTube channel, but don't forget to subscribe the very minute you join the channel, okay? Of course, we are the home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. We want you to stay with us for the duration as we do analysis. We have the head of the Association of Ghana Industries joining us for this conversation. He's in the person of Seth Chum-Akwabwa, but he's not the only one. Here in the studio, we are honored to have with us from Deloitte Ghana, the Associate Director for Tax, Wisdom Bano. Now, before the break, of course, we were talking generally about the performance of the economy and what we can expect going forward into the rest of the year. Now, we're not expecting new taxes, but I don't know how optimistic we can be about tax cuts. However, there is an aspect of, revenue collection where the biggest criticism of government is that perhaps they've set their rates too high. And so we are no longer competitive. I'm talking about our ports, import duties. And you already heard from Seth Chum-Akwabwa that when you do the price buildup of any imported item, more than half of it is import duties. That is ridiculous. And it's no wonder that people are preferring to import through neighboring countries. So let's talk about that for a minute. What's your opinion here? I mean, are we taxing ourselves out of the import market? Or is it an inelastic demand? Are we so dependent on imports that it doesn't really matter how much duty we charge? Government will still be able to rake in from there.
Right. So certainly you would have to look at a number of factors when we talk about duties. I know we are on the we are on a common tariff scheme in ECOWAS, and the tariff would range from 0 all the way up to 30%. So the specific products would have to be looked at, and we would have to choose how our policies should impact the industry overall. From what Seth mentioned, if we are having so much duty on, say, raw materials, inputs that would go to support our industries, then we would have to look at it. Is it a policy that we have so much duty on those inputs because we have local capacity to provide those inputs? The specifics would have to be put on the table. So it's difficult to judge overall to say that we are so dependent on imports and we can tax ourselves as much as we can. Of course, The taxes on imports are indirect taxes, consumption taxes mostly. So they have that feature where they are easy to collect because people would surely consume some of these products. You look at our import of rice, for instance. We have a huge appetite for rice in this country. So it's difficult to see rice going down because the duty has gone up. But what is the linkage back into local production? And we have had this local rice production conversation for some time. I believe that we just need to get the policies working. We cannot get everything together at the go, but where we target specific areas, we need to start seeing progress in those specific areas. If we are targeting rice, if we are targeting other areas, for instance, what is the balance? Over what period do we implement policies so that we boost local production, but we also do not stifle traders who bring in these products to trade within the country? So I will call for a balance. It's difficult to judge that we are taxing way too much, but it is also important that the conversations continue and we have that balance between what duties we charge at the port, closing the leakages we have at the ports or our entry points, the informal entry point especially, and also have these rates speak to what policy direction we want to go as a country.
Do you think there is the space, fiscal space, if you will, to actually cut down on some of the import duties if government was so minded? I mean, could they do that and still, pay the bills?
I believe we can have the space. We can have the space by not doing the same things we do. We can have the space by increasing voluntary compliance as a nation, as a citizenry. That's we cannot take away. The more revenue we contribute to the kitty, the more space we have for government. Then from a government side, if we are driving the efficiencies in the existing taxes, I believe we can, because there is a lot of room to improve when it comes to the efficiency in our collection and how much our GDP is returning when it comes to revenue. It's not for any reason. It's not in a vacuum that our tax to GDP has remained lower than the Africa average for some time. So that means there is room to improve. And once we are making that improvement and bringing in the revenue, especially from an efficiency point, then we can have the room to review taxes that, from a broad consultation perspective, do not help drive business, do not augur well for the citizenry as a whole.
Now, Seth, you gave us an idea of the performance of industry in the year so far. It made me start thinking about opportunities. You made it clear that, look, we haven't seen mass shutdowns of companies and loss of jobs, but we haven't really seen much expansion either. Now, expansion happens when there are opportunities. And we have seen the exit or the downsizing of several multinational companies, okay? We heard about some change in structure at Société Générale, Glovo, Nivea, Jumia Foods, Lipton Tea from Unilever, Dark and Lovely, Bet365, Game, BIC. Some of these products have left Ghana completely in terms of their manufacture. Some of them have downsized. Some have restructured. Has Ghana's industry, have your members been able to take advantage of this and plug the gaps?
Well, thank you, Kojo. But before I go to that, let's a quick touch on the duties and taxes.
Oh, yes.
I think it's important. It's important to put in the right because you mentioned duties, and it makes it sound as if we are going out of the ECOWAS Common External Tariff Regime, because the ECOWAS Common External Tariff Regime has tariff bans for various products, and all countries within ECOWAS must comply. And indeed, Ghana is complying. But the thing is that it's duties and taxes. For the tax element, the country has the right, individual country has the right to impose any kind of taxes. So when you add the taxes to the duties, then that's where you see the Ghana part ballooning. Because
to over
in addition
50%.
to the normal duties, yes, to the over 50%, because you have Ministry of Trade, IDF fee, you have Ghanaism 0.7%, you have COVID levy, you have Get Fund levy, you have inspection fee, you have COVID-19 health recovery levy, you have import duty levy, you have network charges. So all these, when you itemize them, they are not even part of the duty. The duty itself, as defined, is just 5% of raw materials. So that may sound very low or reasonable, but when you add all these, that's where it balloons it.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to put that clarification so that when we are dealing with it, we are looking at the taxes. And as my colleague said, every government needs taxes to develop. So you have no choice than to collect taxes. But then we have to be strategic about it. Which taxes are supportive of growth of businesses? Which taxes are supportive of growth of industries? Sometimes tax reliefs are very important tools. And, you know, if you live in a country where we think that the best way to generate revenue is to look at import taxes, we are making a mistake. We should rather, and in Ghana today, anytime we have GRA achieving a target, we are not looking at the key components. The key components of GRA taxes is domestic tax and international. International is the import duties that we receive. Anytime they say, oh, we've done very well at the ports, so we've achieved so much, we are not, and then they are achieving targets, we are clapping, we are happy about it. It should be that when we are achieving those targets, it should be more of local domestic taxes or revenue that we are generating that we should be excited about. Because the more of the imports you get, that gives you that import revenue, the lower the local production. Because, and if you stop the imports, it means that you not generate so much revenue from import duties and import taxes, okay? And if you are not generating that much, then local production is coming up. It is better. But today, in our environment, if you are unable to generate enough from the ports, we complain. It should be that we shouldn't generate that much, but we should look more at local. I mean, if you go to the US and the rest, I don't think their import duties consume more than 2, 3, 5%. It's local production, and that's what we should be aiming at. So we shouldn't be too excited about DRA achieving its target, and the target is more of the ports, monies we make from the ports. Of course, competition is key, and therefore other countries are competing with us. If we are losing on the basis of other countries that are competing and taking the money away, then that's problematic. But if you are losing, if you are reducing the percentage because local production is jacking up, for me, that is a better model to have.
So what you're saying is that, in effect, the better the GRA does against their targets, the worse Ghana industries are doing, because it means that we've imported more.
If the better they make is in respect of imports or from the international bit.
And you are saying that that's the biggest component, right? You're saying that that's the biggest component of their targets.
Yes. But it must be compensated. I'm giving a caveat here. It must be compensated with local generated taxes from domestic, what we call the domestic taxes. If you have local volumes going up and you are generating more from the corporate taxes, from the VAT, from other taxes that you are generating locally, and because you are doing so much volumes, you are reducing imports, then it means that you are compensating the imports with local production.
But Seth, let me ask you this, forgive me. How much of this lies in the hands of industry? You know, I was asking about opportunities and the gaps that have been created by the exit of some of these multinationals. Is industry well positioned enough to take advantage of these exits? Is it easy for a Ghanaian business to set itself up as a substitute for a product or service that we have hitherto been enjoying from a foreign source?
I think that is a wish of every Ghanaian producer, every Ghanaian company, that when opportunity comes, you grab it. And as people who are leaving, you want to take advantage of the market, the gap that is going to exist. But indeed, the question you will also ask is, why are they leaving? Those who have left, They probably left because the condition wasn't favorable enough. And has the condition changed for the local producer who can then take advantage of it? They are probably leaving because all these factors that we talk about, the challenges in the business environment, has not made their business conducive enough to survive. So if you're a local producer and you're going to operate under the same conditions, can you really become a substitute? So that's the question we need to ask. And that's why we say that if you really want industry to take up some of these challenges and opportunities, then we must create conditions that enable them to happen. So we have to be strategic. And I talked about the fact that if you pick products like the agricultural sector, the agri value chain, most of the manufacturers in Ghana, the major challenge they have, you'll be surprised, is raw materials. Getting consistent, reliable, and regular supply of raw material to feed your industry is not that simple and easy. And therefore, you set up an industry and you think that for you as a manufacturer, you have that reliable supply of raw material, and therefore you are okay. But you notice that you start production and you're not getting it, and that becomes a big challenge for you. So if you take the likes of Blue Skies and a few others, sometimes raw material becomes such a big. So if you want to develop it, what you should do is to develop the entire value chain. And if you develop the entire value chain, then you can have that regular supply. The problem is that for a typical manufacturer, you cannot always do backward linkages and go establish your own farms and produce and transport to your factory before you produce. It's the business of others. That's why some of us keep saying that Ministry of Agri is doing well in terms of its target or objective of food security. But we should go beyond that. Now we've reached the stage where food security shouldn't be a problem. We should have a strategy that produces for local industry, to feed local industry. So it's not just food security, but also feeding local industry. If we adapt that strategy well, and it's not just the food industry, it is also the other manufacturing areas that you need to look at the inputs. A lot of the inputs, those that can be developed or produced locally, let's give support and a strategy so that these companies become off-takers. You talked about tea, Unilever, and Unilever produce still significant part of its products locally. But as a strategy, what most of the multinationals do is that they have different products. There are different countries producing these products. So they look at the market or the country that has the lowest cost for production of a particular product. And when they identify that Ghana is good at producing, say, key soap, they will produce in Ghana and export to other countries. The same way, if another country is doing well, if you take a product like Pepsodent, you'll be surprised that Pepsodent is probably not produced in Ghana. It's brought from somewhere, but it's still Unilever. So as a country, your strategy is to make your cost of production as low as possible so that you have a bigger pie of that kitty. And more of the Unilever products will be produced in Ghana and export elsewhere. Every country is competing. So the strategy is that, how do I do to reduce my cost of production so I can survive? The opportunities are there. The opportunities are always coming. And it's not just coming from those who are already in the market and have left. Because those who have left, as for that one, there's still a challenge there, because they left not because they have discovered another opportunity elsewhere and they have to move their investment. They are probably leaving because the environment is tough. And therefore, that is not the only area of opportunity. But as a developing country, there are several areas that are always coming up. Those areas can be explored. If you look at the bauxite or the aluminum chain, it's a whole chain of industry that can develop. Unfortunately, our target of getting the refinery in Ghana, we've not been able to achieve it. But if you look at that alone, if we're able to get that aluminum, because we have the local raw materials and the bauxite. If you have the bauxite and we're able to produce the bauxite and refine, and then we get Vaco to produce the aluminum ingots, then the likes of Aloex comes on board and produce the sheets, and then the ancillary businesses takes it. The entire chain can be here. We've got to be strategic about it. But in doing so, when you're talking aluminum, you need power. You need low-cost power. Today, we are doing 12 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. Whereas other competing countries like China and they're doing less than 4 cents, 5 cents. So I'm saying this, the point I'm making is that you need to have a lot of things integrated, connected. You need to have cheaper power, you need to have cheaper cost of finance, for the businesses to borrow at a cheaper cost and access to medium to long-term capital. Most of the Ghanaian businesses, their biggest challenge is getting access to that medium to long-term capital. If you go to a bank today, they will give you some facility, but they are short-term. You can't do a 10-year project with that kind of funds, and you cannot borrow at more than 30% interest cost to be able to do that kind of project. It's not possible. So if you don't have funding, that gives you the room. How can you take advantage of the opportunities that are coming up? And that is where the problem is. That's where you see a lot more of the international companies coming in and then appear, and they survive even better because their source of funding is different from ours. Most typical Ghanaian businesses do not have that kind of funding. It is the reason why we had a lot of discussions with government, and government tried to come in with something with the establishment of the development bank. That was the concept. You remember some years back, out of frustration, ADI said we are even going to establish our own bank. Along the line, we couldn't because the minimum capital requirement was even raised, and we didn't have the resources to do so. But we pushed government, and government accepted it, and let's establish a development bank. So today we have a development bank. But do we have adequate funding for the development bank? And are we getting more of the businesses funded and supported? And even the development bank, what is the interest cost? The essence of having a development bank is to have a reasonable interest rate that people can borrow medium to long term. You can't borrow 30% and do long-term business. So invariably what people do is that they borrow short-term to do long-term business, and that's very, very dangerous. So they grow a little bit and then they struggle along the line and then they go off. So if you want sustainable business that is industrial oriented, as for expertise and knowledge, people have it and you can tap into it. A lot of our companies, we've been traveling around the world. We are looking for investors. Some come in partnership. That's why GIPC law, even when you are doing business as an international operator with a local company, your capital requirement, once it's in partnership, is reduced. So we can solicit support, we can solicit partnership to develop some of these areas, but you need the funding. And we don't have the right financial model to support local industry. That's a big challenge that most companies have. So you are right, opportunities are there, opportunities are coming up. Are we able to take advantage of it? The factors that enables us to take advantage of it, I don't think we've had those all factors ironed out. And that is where the challenge is. All right.
Wisdom, I mean, we've talked about revenue. Can we talk about expenditure for a minute? Now, I've got some comparative figures here. Okay, so in terms of revenue, we've done better for the January to August period 2024 than we did in 2023, right? 2023, by this time, we had collected about 143.9 billion. Right. This year, we've got about 176.4 billion. Good work. Right. But expenditure. This time last year, we had 190.9 billion CD bill. We had spent that much already. All right. This year, we've already spent 226.7 billion CDs, okay? So our fiscal balance there, I mean, about 47% by this time, 47 billion by this time last year, 50.3 billion by this time in 2024. So expenditure is clearly still a problem. We've collected more, but we've spent far more. It's an election year. Let's be real. Can we honestly expect this government to spend less in the last few months to a make or break election?
Right. Very good question. And yeah, thanks for bringing the comparison up. Maybe so the part I would have loved for us to have in addition to that would be how much of that was budgeted for. Are we within budget? Because when the finance minister says that he's not bringing a supplementary budget, does it mean that the budget approved for 2024 is enough to spend for the rest of the year? So the devil can be in the details. But then overall, if we are getting indications that we've spent more, then that would also mean that we would need to look at how we spend going forward. Austerity measures are measures that we, as a country, we hope that the government, being the biggest spender, can spend within a particular limit to also drive the economy. That we cannot take away, because once government cuts down so much on expenditure, the rippling effects is real. But then it's government spending within its budget so that we can be heading towards our targets. That would be the important question that we would need to answer, and that's one of the key areas I'm hoping to see the budget statement, the mid-year budget statement, give us some official numbers around how we are doing and how we intend to track towards the end of the year, because that will be important to assess whether government can spend within its budgets or not. But no supplementary budget, potentially good news. Can we spend within? We would have to wait to see. The Prof made references to the deals, the bilateral deals we have in place that has given us some space. And it's important that all of us, from all angles, and the political divide, ensure that we keep the accountability on, and also ensure that the space we have goes into productive spending, so that it gives us a good base for the year and a good base for 2025.
Seth, let's talk a little bit of banking for a moment. And I just noticed some of the targets that we had at the beginning of the year around our rates, okay? And yeah, in addition to all the tax reliefs, there were plans by government to make credit a bit more affordable, okay? Tell me what the reality has been in 2024 for industries' access to credit.
It is accessibility and affordability, and the two must work hand in hand. If it's accessible and it's so expensive, even the banks themselves will discourage you to borrow, because if you borrow, they will have they know that you cannot pay back. Yeah. They look at your cash flow, they look at your financials, and they do all the analysis, and they will say, if you borrow at this rate, how are you going to be able to generate your resources to be able to pay me back? So they would even discourage you, even if they have the resources. So affordability is key, and so is accessibility. Accessibility also means that the funds must be available. Unfortunately, because of the debt exchange that the banks experienced, today, the banks do not have that much volume of cash to give out. In any case, because of government's own challenges as well, government is borrowing a lot from the banking system through the treasury bills. And the government treasury bill, which is supposed to be risk-free, is so high, over 26%, thereabout. It means that no bank will lend to you lower than that, because that is relatively risk-free. For a small business, the risk level, as we all know, is higher, because you are dependent on a system that you cannot plan and predict so well, and there are so many challenges along the line. Of course, on the part of business, we also know the business governance issues are there. We can talk about it. But all these factors are taken into account. And then the banks will say, listen, it is more riskier to lend to you as an SME than to lend to government. So if government is borrowing at 26%, what rate would the bank lend to you, the business person, especially an SME? So accessibility is a major challenge now, because the funds availability to on-lend is weak. The capacity of the banks to on-lend is weak, because they themselves, a lot of the investment they make through government is somehow not available for them to on-lend. And the little that is left, they are lending it to government in the form of higher treasury bill rates. Yeah. So accessibility is a big problem. And then, and because of the risk factor, when they calculate the interest cost, they always take account of the risk factor. And the higher the risk, the higher your interest cost. So it makes borrowing cost very high. So as far as that is concerned, I don't think we've managed to achieve it. Right. Surely not. Right. Yes.
Currently, the monetary policy rate is hovering around about 29%, with the 91-day Treasury bill paying out 23.34% on that investment. So Interesting. Listen, we're gearing up for the delivery of the mid-year budget review in Parliament. And our parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante, has been testing the pulse of those who are as yet present. Let's find out what the latest is. Kweku, have the minority showed up? Are they going to participate?
Kojo, they haven't. In fact, it's 10 minutes to 1. That is 3 hours before the scheduled time for the mid-year budget presentation to commence. And not a single minority MP is currently on the floor. It is empty on the minority pews. A number of the NPP MPs have taken their seat. In fact, some of them taking their seat for so long, they seem tired, they've gone out, and some of them keep going up and down like that. So it's tough here. We understand there are tough communications and negotiations underway currently. We try and get an understanding of how exactly to proceed from here. Because the longer this drags, the more untidy it becomes. Imagine it gets to 3 p.m. and there's no indication when it's going to start. And what time exactly will that happen? And so we are trying to work our sources, get some understanding in terms of what exactly is happening. We understand it's related to common fund payment and a number of privileges that MPs normally enjoy that is not coming in, and the minority are the ones leading this protest. This is literally a protest that they are leading to try and get government to make some commitments before the presentation itself will start. So, Kojo, yes, 3 p.m. is very likely that can happen. But, George, what are you learning?
I think that it might be just more than a common fund issue.
Yeah.
But what I've also picked up from what is going, that some progress has been made on that one. And it appears that very, very soon that hedge will be climbed, if I can use that expression, and then the presentation will start very, very soon. But it appears it is more than just the payment of common fund issue. There are some issues that, from what I've picked up, from the other side, they are surprised that it has gotten to this level. And it's being worked out quickly to ensure that they come back in. The minister is in, some of the government officials are in at the speaker's lobby. Some discussions are going, and hoping that all other things being equal, the minister could come in very soon. And you could see the majority of the minority members are in the cafe, showing that they are willing to move in as soon as that challenge is dealt with. So you don't get the sense that they really want to boycott this presentation. So if they're able to make some progress, they will start, and it appears that they are making progress, and they'll soon be able to have the minister to come in and give the presentation. It appears the speaker is also waiting for them, because as soon as that problem is dealt with, they will draw his attention, and then he will walk in for the presentation to start.
Well, so for those of you who are not really familiar with the way Parliament works, just across this chamber, in fact, it's just a wall that separates there. That is where the coffee shop is. And a number of minority MPs are seated. They are there. Haruna Idrisu, the former minority, there are so many of them. In fact, I saw Kwame Gavin Sagboja at the ceremonial entrance together with Roxy Nelson, the family. But they are all around, the minority.
And I saw the leadership actually walking into the speakers just about 30 minutes or 15 minutes ago. Sorry, So
all of them available now. As soon as these issues that are being dealt with is cleared, then that is going to happen. And just like George has been updating us, significant progress is being made in terms of reaching some agreement so that every specific issue that the minority have issues in, they are staying out of the chamber. In fact, I spoke to Honorable Ernest Norway on the Midday News. He said it hadn't trickled down to him that they were boycotting or anything, and that he was just waiting for indication, and they were walking. But it's a bit surprising that, normally MPs, they don't come in at once, they don't come in like school children. They come in as and when they want, they take their seats, and then proceedings will start. But it is very surprising that not a single one of them is seated. It tells you that there is something of a sort stopping them from doing so. We are trying to get
the former Minister of Information. And one question I'll ask him about whether he misses the ministry, because at this time he's putting all the documents together, trying to brief the public and to try and
manage the post-budget presentation to Parliament today. And we'll be asking him that question about whether he indeed misses that occupying that position. Now that he's taken on a new role, and how are things going
It appears he's more relaxed. I mean, that is tough. I mean, having to go on to the public and respond to all the tough questions, the tough criticism that come with doing this job. And he could join us up here pretty shortly. So that
we have seen this thing here before, Kweku. During Setekwe's time, when he was also going to present budget, it came up. So
it's not new. It's not new.
It's not new, but for some people, they thought that we shouldn't have got it here. So it is not a boycott. They are around, leadership are around. Normally, you wouldn't see them around. And then you question them personally. It's like, we are waiting for leadership call. As soon as we are asked to come in, or some will even say that the minister is not around, we are waiting for the minister. So you don't get that indication that they really want to boycott this presentation. When that issue is dealt with, they will come in for the presentation. But Kweku, also help me out. I mean, what has it got to do with the issue about timing as well here in terms of whether when it crosses a certain time, can the presentation be done here in Parliament?
Yes, when it comes to the presentation, Parliament itself a master of its own rules, and they can deal with the timing in terms of what exactly they want to do. It can go to 8 p.m. and if they are minded to sit, they will sit and listen to this presentation. However, given that the debates and other things are expected to kickstart, if there are things that would have to go to committee for approval, that will mean a number of approval would have to be sought, and all these issues have to be dealt with. And that is why these issues are key. And that is why Parliament has to start this as soon as practicable, get some understanding, and then if there are matters that will have to be referred to the various committees, they will all be dealt with. But in terms of the way things are, it will be started today. In fact, if it gets to the point where the minority are insistent on their position and are not willing to back down, the majority MPs would simply take their seats, disperse, and then the minister can deliver his address. But I just don't think the minister wants to address a one-sided house, and that is the challenge. And that is why they are trying to meet the minority MPs halfway.
What about the issue about quorum as well?
Well, normally the minority MPs will raise quorum and ask, but that the NPP MPs are 138. If all of them show up today, that means business can proceed. And that is the challenge. It will be difficult to get all 138 MPs on such a day because it's not a day, it's not a State of the Nation address, it's not when they are voting on certain crucial taxes and all that. So it will be difficult to get all 138 of them. But if there are no minority MPs on the floor, then no one raises issue of quorum. And that will mean the presumption of regularity, the idea that, well, it would appear that there's a quorum to do business, to do everything, it will go on. But like you said, substantial progress has been made. Very soon, we would expect that the little weightier matters that is stopping the NDC MPs from taking their chairs will be dealt with, and then ultimately they will come to the floor. And
let's look at the persona.
The persons who are in
that is, or even Dr. Mohammed Amin Adam, and how he cuts across, if I stand to be, in terms of Parliament, and whether, again, that person or the personality he brings on board would help deal with some of the concerns that the minority are raising, because it appears that when it came to Kenofriata, they took certain entrenched positions. What about the person, Mohammed Amin, in terms of his engagement in Parliament on other issues as well?
I think Mohammed Amin Adam has been a fantastic person so far since he assumed. In fact, recently, when it came to the approval of some loans, he stood up on the floor and offered his assurances. And just his assurances was enough to let the minority allow their loans to go through. There was a 250 million Garrett loan. There was a 150 million Garrett loan that came up for the floor. And the minority were insistent that that loan was not going to be passed. And then the minister, I remember what he was saying. He was just sitting behind Osei Chairman Sabons who were up there. And he just offered assurances that, listen, the concerns that you've offered about the initial 250 million Garrett loan that was approved, that you say you didn't see what was useful, I'm going to provide you that later. And then, just by that, Haruna Idrisu able to get the minority leadership to try and back down. So, in terms of his ability to get the minority to tone down a little bit, he has deep friendship with Murtala Mohammed, the kind of guys who raise a lot of quorum issues on the floor. He has that kind of relationship with them. So, I think so far, having been in the office for all this long, he's able to deal with some of these issues, and he has been successful.
I am bringing up this issue because of the negotiations that are currently ongoing in the Speaker's lobby. And he's there, and what that will mean for what he's going to bring on board to deal with that concern. So the minority members can come in for a presentation to start.
Definitely. And like you said, We understand that certain substantial progress has been made. We understand the majority leader himself, Alexander Afenyo-Markin, is trying to get a few things done. State Chairman Sabusu, the former leader himself, also there. If it gets to the point where they have to call in some of these experienced hands to try and get these things drawn out, he will probably also intervene. So the majority side and the government side have what it takes. They have the tools. We don't know if the chief of staff itself probably will come in today. I haven't seen it around. I haven't got that dedication. There are a number of people who will be willing to put their resources and their experience at the disposal of the minister and the government side to try and get this.
Let's look at the numbers as well. I mean, this is a mid-year review. This is a program in Parliament. I have seen very senior members and notable faces that are actually being seated as early as possible here waiting for it to happen. What is special about today, even though we know that there's a mid-year review, or is it the whip doing his work?
So when it comes to the big events in Parliament, the media budget review is about the number 3 on that row. There's the budget itself, quite important. There's the State of the Nation address, and then there's the media budget review. And so when it comes to this, normally the attendance is high. But this is significant also because this is the last media budget review of the President for the government. They don't even have a big budget to present.
But don't forget that vote of account in November this year.
So vote on account. And so in terms of the significance, one would even say that this is big because the vote on account will just take care up to the first quarter of the next year and all that. But Dominic Etu, the Minister for Defense, was here.
I saw him here,
He came in and he's been
the Minister of Foreign Affairs was also around as well.
He's also been around. Kennedy Japan, Chairman of the Defense and Interior Committee, also here. Samuel Abu-Jinapor is here. I've also seen Peter Amewu, Member of Parliament for Hoho, Minister from Railway.
The Minister of Interior as well is also around. He is actually sitting with the minority
MPs in the coffee
cafeteria.
All of them to try and see if they can get a certain understanding.
The local government minister as well. I saw him at the cafeteria as well.
Definitely. Kojo Oponkroma, Minister for Works and Housing, also present. So in terms of the figures, in terms of the personalities, the whips have been able to draw them. I haven't seen Frank Anodampe the whole of today in the chamber. But given how big these issues are, I understand he is also trying to do, because this is a whip job. Definitely he's trying to get all this. So we are getting the Minister for Works and Housing, Kojo Oponkroma, to come and get us a certain understanding of what may be going on, what the expectation is of government and all that. And Kojo Oponkroma, since he left the Information Ministry, he's been taking his time trying to work on stalemate and other affordable housing projects. Minister, it's good to have you.
Welcome.
So, I mean, what's going on? Your colleagues on the NDC, do you have any indication why they are not? They are there, they are in the coffee shop, but they are not taking their seat.
I cannot tell. We are here. The Finance Minister has been here for a while. We do know that the midyear statement is ready, and we're waiting for the Speaker to be available to, enter the chamber, and then we'll proceed.
What are your own expectations coming into this? I mean, I'm sure this has come to Cabinet. There's a lot of talk about revenue measures. Some have told us no new revenue measures expected. Others have even gone to the point of saying that, listen, certain tax standards are going to be removed. What kind of indication can you give us going into this statement?
I mean, I think the first thing is to take a cue from the type of instrument that the minister is bringing to the floor this afternoon. He's not coming by motion. He's coming by statement. And that gives you a clue that it is a review and not necessarily a supplementary budget. The second is that it is to be expected that at this time of the year, in accordance with the Public Financial Management Act, he will be providing an update of the economic performance and the fiscal performance as well. I think Ghanaians will be pleased to see how the numbers have performed in most areas. Of course, there are a few areas in which we could have done better, but in the majority of areas, Ghanaians will be pleased to see how we have performed in those areas. In terms of the priorities between now and the end of the year, I think he will be speaking to 3 or 5 priorities that the administration will be focusing attention on. I know that various ministries have been lobbying to have their sectors prioritized between now and the end of the year. But looking at the fiscal space available, he can accommodate maybe just between 3 and 5. He will outline what the focus will be between now and the end of the year.
And Kojo, it comes back to, again, your sector and how critical certain projects need to be completed, and even the ones that need to put some finishing touches to it. We are going into an election where the minister has promised that there will be put into the expenditure and IMF program and all the rest. How difficult is it for you as well as in lobbying to ensure that some of those key projects in your ministry are completed. But again, they are pulled in the budgets and trying to avoid the election curse.
I mean, it's a beautiful question that you're asking. And it's the fundamental question of what do you do as a ministry to achieve your objectives, and how much of those objectives require funding from the Treasury. It's a very important thing. We have a huge wish list as a country. People want roads, people want houses, we want more support in agri, healthcare, etc. How much of that can you as a ministry finance from other sectors, and how much can the Treasury fund? The problem over the years has been that very often we leave everything to the Treasury. And so finance ministers have to end up borrowing beyond limits or overtaxing just so that they can satisfy the wish list. I'm hoping that based on the representation that we made to the ministry, housing will be included as one of the priority sectors for the rest of the year. But whether it is or it is not, it behoves on us as a ministry and as all other ministries to find ways by which we can mobilize other resources, use other instruments to crowd in resources to achieve the objectives of the ministry. So, for example, in our space, as we are trying to resolve the stalled project or complete the stalled projects, we have not gone to the finance ministry for money. So, SAGLEMI, we need about $100 million to complete. We haven't gone to the finance ministry. We are working with the private sector to crowd in resources to do a PPP that allows us to finish. So far, as I'm sure you are aware, and we've been very transparent about it, about 5 companies have finally brought in their bids. I do understand that the PPA has approved one of the accounting firms to do the evaluation. We've committed that we'll publish all the bids and the evaluation report. But the important thing is that the money and the technical advice will not be coming from the Treasury. In Adenta, 70 homes that have been abandoned for about 10 years now that we are resolving. Again, we haven't gone to the finance ministry for money. We are working with private sector to bring in private funding and technical expertise to finish it. In Koforidua, where we're going to do the same thing, we're not going to the Treasury for money. But this is just an example of what do you do to achieve the objectives of your ministry without necessarily putting the burden on the Treasury. And it's a very important question that you have asked, and I hope that as we go along in the next 5, 10, 15 years, it's something that we'll be discussing. Nonetheless, I'm hoping that our area will be prioritized in the areas that he would outline today, so that we can still get some resources from the Treasury to make it easier for us to do our job.
When you look at SAGLEMI, would that be ready before December?
Oh, SAGLEMI, I mean, if you look at the outstanding works, 1,506 units that have not been fully completed, water, electricity, and sewage that has to be connected. It will take a while. But we're now going to go into negotiations with whoever is selected by the independent valuation entity. So I won't put all our cards on the table. We have an idea what the work plan looks like. We'd like to hear them, and then we can agree on a joint work plan and then get to work.
There was something that you've done for the police service that is going to be commissioned. I don't know the date. Are we going to see that being replicated for the other agencies as well and government institutions?
So already we have done 1,000 homes for the security services between 2017 and now. We did about 312 in Kwabinya, the first phase of 514 homes for the Ghana Police Service. Today we handed over, the President just handed over 320 literally minutes ago. I'm just coming from Tesano. And then already we had done one in Tema at the Naval Base, another 300 and something. That comes together to give 1,000 homes to the security services of this country, unprecedented. Already we have requests, in fact the military alone is requesting for about 1,000. Other state agencies are also requesting for some more. So we have a lot of requests. We have a lot of technical work that has already been done. The funding is what is the challenge now. Within the fiscal envelope, what can be made available, we're happy to receive it. But outside that, we're also looking to explore how else we can mobilize resources to get these projects done. But the security services are very happy. It provides a lot of dignity for their homes, for their families, and a peace of mind for them to work.
Kojo, do you miss your former minister? At this time, you have been carrying out the documents, do you know the prep work and even the post-budget engagements as well? Let me ask you that question.
Well, I've actually been doing a bit of work. Honorable Amin is a very, very, very good friend of mine.
Okay.
And I work very closely with him. In fact, in the last week gone by, himself and his technocrats, we've had the opportunity to, be of support to them. But Honorable Fatih is the one at the forefront currently, and she's more than capable of carrying it forward. So I don't have to worry too much about that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister.
Kojo.
So,
thank you.
Honorable Kojo Nkrumah giving us a certain indication in terms of what exactly he himself has been doing at his ministry to get the buy-in to get the kind of support they need to get the resource envelope. I also have Honorable Paul Chumberi, Madoma East Member of Parliament, joining us. Fellow Vandals, so that is 3 Vandals standing here right now. So I don't know, where are Mensa Saba people? These are just Vandals games now. Honorable, what is going on? What are you hearing about your colleagues and where are they?
The last time I checked, I think they are in a caucus meeting. And I don't know whether they are done or not, but clearly it's not out of place. You've been in this house for a while, and you know caucus meeting can be called at any time with the permission or seeking a leave of the speaker. So clearly, I mean, that is what we are aware of. I'm not aware of any other thing.
Yesterday, you told me, when I asked you about your expectation, that you said you don't expect new taxes. Given this morning, you still get the same indication. And in fact, the minister is coming by statement. It will mean that it's not going to move motion. And normally, that means the status quo, just a review.
Exactly. So clearly, we are not expecting any new taxes. We are not expecting to come and request for any supplementary funds. What it means is that, as you just said, it's a statement on which members may be allowed to comment on. Then there's not going to be any debate. And I am sure that he's going to spend within what we approved for him earlier on. Indeed, I'm actually expecting him to spend below. So, looking at what we've done with the IMF and all that, I expect him to spend below whatever he has done and all that. So, that's what it is.
Right. Honorable, thank you. Thank you. So, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Samuel Abujinapo, also joining us on set to try and get an understanding of how exactly all this is going and the big issues that are being discussed in the mid-year budget review. Honorable, it's good to have you join us live on set, and the kind of questions that we want to get addressed. The Minister, a Member of Parliament for Damongo, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, coming to give us. Minister, so the Minister is set to make his presentation. We understand he's around. A few hold-ups here and there. What are your big expectations? Well, we are trying to understand.
That's what we are trying to find out.
Minority telling us that they have some issues. Do you have any indication about what is happening?
Well, you should probe. I don't know, but you should probe.
We have been probing. We understand common fund issues, a few minority issues, housekeeping matters, and all us, you members who normally put it. But the Minister is expected to come. What are your own expectations, Minister?
But why should we hold the business of the country because of... yes, what is housekeeping matters and what constitutes housekeeping anyway, but I'll leave that to leadership. I think my expectations will be that the finance minister will appear before the House to give an honest account and an honest report of the state of the Ghanaian economy. As you know, the Public Financial Management Act enjoins the finance minister to give a mid-year budget review before the 31st of July every year, essentially to tell the country where we are with the national economy. And I believe that this mid-year budget statement by the finance minister is even a more consequential and profound one, given the history, the recent history and experience we have had as a country. The biggest issue today in Ghana is the national economy, and the national economy is taking a beating because of the matters exogenous matters that we are all very much aware of. And my understanding and indication from the retreat we had over the weekend to discuss this mid-year budget review is that, yes, we still have challenges, no two ways about that. There are difficulties. We are not out of the woods yet. We still have some way to go in terms of repairing our public finances and rebuilding our national economy and get to the point of growth. These are all facts. And it's also a fact that there are hundreds and thousands of people out there, young people who want jobs and families who are still struggling to make ends meet. All of these are truths, and all of these are realities of Ghanaian living today, which we have to concede and acknowledge. But that said, it's absolutely clear that the measures that Akufo-Addo government has put in place, the post-COVID-19 economic recovery plan, is yielding some very encouraging and positive results. There's absolutely no two ways about that. You see that the currency is now strengthening. You see that the economy is growing.
Maybe some on the currency, some will say it is quite debatable because
there's some still level of depreciation that we are seeing in the local currency.
Oh, but I think yesterday, this week, the cedi gained against the US dollar. I mean, I saw it myself. But you are right. I mean, as I said, we are not out of this. But what is important when it comes to these matters is that there is obviously some indication of a rebound and revival. There's absolutely no twist about that. And I think that in all modesty, any objective pundit will concede and acknowledge that if you look at the indicators, whether it's inflation, whether it's the deficit, whether it's growth rate, whether it's the currency, whether it's our balance of payment, whichever way you look at it, manufacturing for the first time since 2020 is moved from negative growth to positive growth. As we speak, the IMF and our international partners have projected that we'll grow first quarter by 1.5. We've grown by 4 point something. The growth projection for this year is being put at beyond 3%, which is unprecedented. Any country that has gone through an IMF program and all our peers are in a situation where they are not going to be able to grow beyond 1.5%. So what does that mean for us? For me, that is what is important. What it should mean is that we should all rally together and bind together and support the measures the government is implementing. Support this new phenomenal dynamic finance minister who is showing a lot of promise so we can build the Ghanaian economy, pull it out of the doldrums, and create the hundreds and thousands and millions of jobs which the Ghanaian youth deserve and will get.
Honorable, you are an MP, you are a minister as well, and during that cabinet briefing, there's a clear direction of trying to scale back expenditure in an election year. The economics, to say, is a prudent thing, but in economics, there's political economy. How easy, how difficult is it for you as a minister when you're demanding funds to complete those projects and get those things done? And a member of parliament as well, to deal with this challenge 5 months to elections?
Well, I think, first of all, I have to respect my cabinet oath of secrecy, so you don't expect me to tell you what transpired in cabinet. Secondly, we need to allow the finance minister to come forward and give us the details, and therefore, I would not want to take the wind out of his sail. But that said, absolutely important that we stick to fiscal discipline. There's absolutely no.
How easy that is in an election year,
well,
where in a country where projects and those things contribute to winning the vote for you?
We have to continue to explain to the Ghanaian people. We have to continue to engage the Ghanaian people so the Ghanaian people will understand us, understand the government. That is absolutely important. That is in our collective interest for us to stick to fiscal discipline so we don't derail these obvious gains. We don't derail this momentum we are building in the Ghanaian national economy. I think it's absolutely important because the election will be over. We will get into 2025, and what should be our goal, what should be the objective of the government and the people of Ghana is that we continue on this trajectory so that this year, as I said to you, we grow beyond the expectation, we grow beyond the projection. Next year, we can have a full rebound, and then the economy can begin to boom. So we can have the jobs, we can have the prosperity which the Ghanaian people deserve and should have. And so fiscal discipline is absolutely important.
But Minister, the people would seem not to care about it. They want their roads. They want the schools built. They want all these infrastructure. They want the big things. They want it. They want. And one would say that politicians going into election, you have to do this, and you continue to promise them that, and so they expect that going into the election.
Yeah, but the point about fiscal discipline doesn't mean that you stop all projects. No, we have a program, and the roads minister, as you see, has been very busy. He's been very active. And he's shown a lot of dynamism in that industry, in that sector. And we're going to continue to build roads. We have an envelope for roads, and that is going to continue. We're going to continue to build water. We're going to continue to provide water. We're going to continue to build hospitals. We're going to continue to build infrastructure, and we're going to continue to put in place a welfare scheme which will cushion those who are vulnerable. But all said, what fiscal discipline means is that you stay within your program, you stay within your budget. And the finance minister is determined to stay within his budget. And this review and this statement the finance minister is going to make, you will see clearly that this is a finance minister who is on top of his brief, who is on top of the national economy of our country. And you will also see that this is a government that is thought through the issues, that has a program, that has a plan, and with the support of the Ghanaian people, God willing, we will build a new economy, we will build and we will repair our national economy, we will repair our public finances post-COVID-19, and by the grace of Almighty God, when they give Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia a term, come January 2025, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the economic guru that we know him to be, will build on the legacy of Akufo-Addo, will build on what Finance Minister Amin Anta is doing, and Ghanaians will now begin to see the real fruits, the real positive fruits of the hard labor that we are putting in place today.
Honorable, before we let you go, quick one on your sector. You recently tried to get some agreement passed through the House, and how is it going with that one?
Well, it's before the House. I think we are appearing before the committee next week. I'm very confident in the arrangements we made with our lithium resources, and I think that the pundits have all now...
I think we're getting a good deal?
We've got a very fantastic deal, and it's been scrutinized over and over again, and I think that what we put together is absolutely in the national interest. We'll be appearing before the Natural Resources Committee of Parliament next week, and the matter is in within the confines of Parliament, and when we come, we will make our case before the committee. It's my expectation that the House will ratify it. So this project, which is going to unleash hundreds and thousands of jobs in the central region and also bring about a lot of opportunities, economic opportunities for Ghanaian private sector, will take off. And so we will see next week.
Is that the same sense you get with the Rockshore bauxite agreement, which you also made?
In the same vein.
Finally, Honorable, I mean, there are some who have argued that the time has come to take a second look at the stability agreements with all the extractive sector. What are your thoughts on that?
We should have a conversation about that. But we don't live in an island. If you don't have a stability agreement, and Burkina Faso does, and Cote d'Ivoire does, and South Africa does, investors will go to those places. They won't come to your country. So when it comes to the extractive industry, you have to be competitive. You have to be competitive. Today, under our watch, in all humility and modesty, since I became minister, Ghana is moved from being the second leading producer of gold to the first leading producer of gold. We've overtaken South Africa. It is because we put in place the measures and the conducive environment to attract investment. It is because we have new mines coming up. Never before in the history of Ghana do we have new mines coming up, springing up all over the place. Newmont is building a new mine in Ahafo. Cardinal Namdin is building a new mine in Upper East. Azuma Resources is building a new mine in Upper West. Mines which were dormant, like Bibiani, like Chirano, all of those have been revamped. And it's giving us a lot more ounces of gold to make Ghana the leading producer of gold on the African continent. We need many of such investments. And to be able to have that kind of investment, you have to put in place the conducive environment, the attractive policies and measures which will attract investors into your national economy and into your mining industry and into the extractive industry generally. So yes, stability clauses, we can have a discussion on all of these matters. I have no difficulty about that. We have a national discourse on that. But at the end of the day, we should put in place measures and put in place a framework which will attract investment into the extractive industry of our country.
Thanks so much, Honorable. Appreciate your time, sir.
So the Minister for Lands giving us a certain overview of his ministry, what they are doing, his expectation of the budget. He was definitely part of that budget cabinet retreats. They've spoken about all these issues. He's not going to betray his cabinet oath and secrecy, as he says.
But he saw the smirk. So what we have picked up is that in those engagements, there was a clear sense in trying to get cabinets buy-in about the fact that going forward, expenditure has to be scaled down. And how do you deal with the pressures coming from colleague finance ministers in terms of what is the way forward?
George, I like what I hear from both Kojo Nkrumah and Samuel Abu-Jinapor, who are all ministers, cabinet ministers, who attended this cabinet retreat. There is this sense that they want to stand by the commitment the minister has made, stick to the budget, not overspend, not overreach. That is very positive signals, and I think investors must be
it is
now.
good that they will talk about it now, but the reality is on the ground. And as I said earlier on, that yes, organized labor would demand their pound of flesh, but my prayer is that I hope that expenditure is captured in the budget. If it's not captured in the budget, and you saw what happened with the SNIT issues, CLOSAG, and how it nearly actually put the economy on heat.
Yeah.
So we hope that these expenditure, they are captured in the budget. If they are not captured in the budget and government has to go ahead and make the payment, we all know the implications that will have on the economy and the rippling effect even on the local currency as well. Cool.
I see a number of MPs up there. I don't know if it's because the speaker is about to walk in. Normally when he's about to walk in, people get up. But that'll be very surprising because the minority MPs have still not taken their seat. In fact, as we speak now, it's 1:23. That is 20. That is about 37 minutes to hit the top of the hour. 2 p.m. And there is absolutely no indication.
I've seen the marshal or the marshals actually.
He's also not there currently, but I've seen the second deputy speakers aides bring in their documents.
Yeah.
It may be an indication that certain progress
has been
made. But George, this is becoming exasperating.
You've covered Parliament, and you know this is not the first time we have witnessed.
I'm not sure you do.
I remember, and I will still go back to Sektepe's era because of being the former administration, where it actually dragged for hours because there was a thorny issue that had to be addressed. And it appears that it has come up again. But you heard from the lands minister saying that why should
we put
people...
The nation literally holding the country around.
So it gives you a sense that there are some members in the majority that are not happy with it, even though the others also think that, listen, this thing should have been addressed long ago and we shouldn't have gotten here. We've seen Dominic Nitiw just sitting, waiting, and he's been here early this morning, to make sure that this presentation is done.
I see Joe Gatti, he's not being quite a regular at this meeting, but he's already taking his seat.
Also
the former roads minister taking his seat. Osei Chairman Sabons has been on the floor seated.
The Minister of Chieftaincy as well was also around there. Asabi was also around as well.
The Attorney General Godfrey Yeboah-Dame is also in Parliament. So in terms of the government and the majority side, it's a full house. They've really come in their numbers to try and see that this presentation will be delivered. But what is stopping the presentation from going on now? And from all indication, that is confirmed, the minority MPs having refused initially up till now, to come to the floor because of certain outstanding business, issues that they want to deal with. We got an update at the top of the hour when George Jaffe, who provided certain clarity that we understand some progress
has been
made. The chief director of the ministry herself, key government officials being at the center of this to try and resolve this. I mean, Ghana is not, the Ghanaian economy is not really receptive to some of these things. But elsewhere, this will be sending signals to the
I think that the signal that it might send is that whether the minority, and this is just, we are told it's a statement, so there wouldn't be debates, but whether the minority would be opposing any of the measures that government will be putting through, or the sense that they will try and reject or stop from anything. That is when you will see the market responding and all the rest. But for some of these investors who are playing in our market, they are quite savvy. I mean, in terms of the information, some have even said that with respect to the IMF inflow that came in and all the rest, they had priced all those things in the outlook of the Ghana city. That is why we've not seen the city respond that much to what is happening right now. So appears that they know that some of these things will happen, and therefore you won't see them react negatively. If rather the sense is that they're going to do everything to stop government business, or even implementing or maybe reject the IMF deal and even the deal with the bilateral creditors, then you might see the currency responding and other things. But it looks like with all these things, they are on board. And you've seen the Minister of Interior as well walking in and grabbing his chair to sit down as well. And again, if all these indications are anything to go by, maybe we may see the minority coming in very soon. If not, maybe there will be a delayed sitting, and how that will impact on other business as well being carried out.
Yeah, so it's almost 1:30 p.m. This is still a rolling live coverage from Parliament, where the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, is expected to present the mid-year budget review. The Finance Minister, I beg your pardon, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, Ken Ofori-Atta, was there for 7 years. It's so difficult to get him out of your mind. And your mouth.
Sometimes reporting on these issues, I mean, I know times when I was scripted and had to even mention Tepe and even Ken Ofori-Atta, and now having to accept Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam. The new Prime Minister of UK had to present a statement, and he rather called the one who has just left office, Sunak, as the Prime Minister. So old habits and reporting on these issues, it could take quite. So maybe you are forgiven.
Thank you for forgiving me. It's just about close to 1:30 p.m. The proceedings has still not commenced, and as we've been telling you throughout this, there's a certain indication that the minority are holding this from starting. They are trying to get a few things that they will be able to extract from the Finance Minister, and so we understand some good progress has been made. We expect that very soon the presentation will be taken. I've seen your other paper. The Minister for Finance is coming by way of statement, and as we've stated, It will mean
and what does it mean? If you can explain that to our viewers.
The minister is coming to deliver a statement, and a statement will not be debated. A statement will normally not be referred to a committee, and then MPs will not debate that. They will comment on it. But when it comes to a motion, the motion normally to review some of the figures in the budget that was presented in 2023 will then be referred to the Finance Committee or any other relevant committee. It will be debated, and then it will come back to the floor for a vote. When it comes to a statement, it means no decision is expected to be taken by the House. But last week, the minority leader, Dr. Kese Latoforsen, did raise some issue. He said that the government sometimes come by way of statement, even when within the statement itself, they've made a few changes. They say they are going to scrutinize the statement that the Finance Minister will bring, and if there are any changes that require an approval by Parliament, they will demand and insist that the Finance Minister come by way of motion so that they can approve that. So we'll see today. I know last year it is a matter that came up when those issues came up about whether certain things have to be approving, certain things do not have to be approved. And I mean, a few months back, those issues were resolved. I quite remember the late Dr. John Kuma, the then Deputy Minister of Finance, speaking to us, trying to explain why they didn't come by way of motion and all those issues that have come up. And so, yes, George has given us some antecedent that this is not the first time that
we've seen one of the members, that is
Honorable
Mutala Mohammed. I mean, he was one of the minority members that actually came very early this morning.
In fact, even before I was in Parliament, he called me. We tried to have an
and he's actually walking across to the majority side.
And in fact, that will tell you that since proceedings started today, this is the first minority MP that has walked into the chamber.
Yeah.
Anybody else has come to speak to us in the gallery, none of them have come in there.
Yeah.
But Mohammed Amin Lam, Honorable Ibrahim Mohammed Butala has become the first minority MP to walk in. Obviously, he will probably walk out because he probably doesn't have the blessing of his leadership.
Because I remember I overheard some conversation in the cafe where they were trying to remind you, there's a decision, so you have to stick by it. But I think that if it's about commending him, he reported very early, came into the chamber, registered, and actually walk out again. We've seen him walk in again and even try to engage members of the majority as well. So you get the sense that it might not be against, I stand to be corrected, a total boycott or walking out. But as long as those issues, or if those issues are addressed, they would indeed come in, and then he is getting the Attorney General and also the Minister, that is the chair, or the new chair of the Finance Committee. And how would this statement actually play out in terms of the reorganization of this whole committee? Could help us and even educate our viewers as well.
Parliament last year did approve a new standing orders. They've retweaked some of the way the committee's establishments are. Then now, Finance Committee has been whittled down in certain sense. Now we have a committee on the budget, we have a committee on the economy, and then the Finance Committee is still there. And so we did get that indication from the majority leader a few weeks ago that they were going to make some changes. They changed the chairman of the committee, Dr. Kuku Kwatin, a veteran on the Finance Committee, previously a Deputy Finance Minister, who's now been moved on to go and be on the Economy Committee. Initially, the understanding was that he was going to be the ranking member and the majority spokesperson on that committee. That did not happen, and he's still just a member of that Economic Committee. And that has
we've also seen
and his former chief whip.
Yeah, they are walking in.
Well, they've just gone.
Walked out. I mean, again, how difficult is it in terms of the whip system here in Parliament, where you quite see some of the members always being very independent. But I remember a colleague was trying to remind Mutala about the fact that there's a decision. You need to stick by it as well. It appears Haruna might be walking into the Speaker's lobby where the negotiations are actually going on.
And so, I mean, it tells you the kind of progress that are being made, that the minority MPs, it's not like they are not around here in a coffee shop. It tells you that progress is being made.
Dominic Ayine is also walking in as well.
Yes, exactly. And then I see the whip on the majority side. This is the order paper addendum. These are just sheets of papers from the order paper itself that were distributed. And these are new business that are being added up onto the program. It tells you that quite soon that is going to be done. And so if they are putting on order paper addendums, it quite tells you that very soon some significant progress will be made, and then the Speaker of Parliament will have to take a seat. When it comes to these matters, the leadership on both sides try to haggle it out, and then the Speaker of Parliament sits in Well, do you hear that? That is the bell.
That is the bell,
That
yeah.
is the bell
That is
tolled
the
in
bell.
Parliament. And when the bell is tolled, it tells you that the Speaker of Parliament feels like he's ready to come and sit. And so it is reminding members of Parliament to come in and take their chairs before the Speaker of Parliament himself walks in. And that is the bell that is tolling around Parliament. The bell office will normally be instructed by the Speaker of Parliament to ring the bell to indicate that sitting is about to proceed, or sitting is going on, but more numbers are needed in the chamber, and so more people have to come in.
We have not seen the minority members in Parliament. The bell is being rung. What does it mean that they will go ahead with that without them?
At some point, if this negotiation breaks down and the minority are simply not allowing it to go, because mind you, like you told us when we started, this is a constitutional, a statutory imperative. This
We've seen Mutaka. I hope he's
working in. That is not a member of Parliament from Ghana. That is a member of Parliament from the Pan-African Parliament, who is working in there with Honorable Frank Mutaka. Those two persons are all members of the Pan-African Parliament. So probably showing a member of Parliament in the Pan-African Parliament around to try and get an understanding of how.
Honorable Katie Hammond also just walked in. Hey, Alaji Katie, let me do that correction.
Before he takes us on. So Alaji Katie Hammond also there. I see Honorable Eugene Entry, the member of Parliament for Subin, also there. So the majority pews are filling in. I can see just a few empty seats. And all of them are there. They are just around the lobbies. And as soon as the indication is given that they can take their seat, they will. Before we were interjected, I was telling you about if negotiations break down and it gets to the point where minorities say they won't. What I anticipate is going to happen is that the majority side are going to spread themselves out into spares and take over these seats so that they will be able to do business. I quite remember at the start of this 8th Parliament, there were a few boycotts from the minority side. What happened was the majority side took their seat so that you don't see an empty half of Parliament. And so some of them will take that seat. We don't anticipate that negotiations will break down. We do hope that at some point in time, negotiations will go on, the agreements will be reached, and then these MPs will take their seat and this will start. It is 25 minutes, or just about 25 minutes to 2 o'clock, and proceedings has not started. We don't know how lengthy or how bulky the statement the minister may be presenting. If it's 2 hours, that takes you to 4 p.m. And
because
then there will be a
let's run our viewers through normally the order. I mean, he's supposed to first update Parliament about what has happened last year in terms of the economy. And don't forget that when he presented the 2024 budget to Parliament, it was up to September last year. So he's supposed to give us a full data of the economy for last year. Come to 2024, give us the economy for the first half of this year, give us an update about revenue, give us an update about expenditure, update us about the IMF program as well, and also going into 2024, what are the macroeconomic numbers as well, some projections there, and also if there are some policy tweaks here in terms of growing, and what we are picking up is the bit about seeing how they can grow the economy by supporting SMEs. So all these things are going to be captured in his statement, and if it goes to be or tries to be more detailed in terms of getting a better picture of the economy, that might take a while. If he tries to be brief or do a summarized presentation, then we are in for a short presentation. So
I mean, there have been good progress that have been made on the IMF negotiation, the debt negotiation front.
We are through with the bilateral creditors. We are yet to get the external creditors sign the agreement in principle that they've reached. And also there is commercial bilateral creditors. We haven't had anything on that one. And also there's an argument even from the minority side that bring all these things to the House for us to approve it as well. So we would want to get those clarity
if all of this will be included
the statement
in the
that he'll be presenting to tell us that this is where we've gotten to. We've done the agreement in principle. When are we going to launch the offer for these bilateral or the Eurobond holders to sign? There are some who have argued that one of the reasons why the city has not responded to all these things is that we've not been able to sign the agreement with these Eurobond holders. So unless that thing is done, then we'll see those offshore funds coming in and the city will respond accordingly. So we will also, maybe we'll be getting more details on that one in the presentation when he comes before the House to do his mid-year presentation to Parliament.
Well, so that is the state of play here. It's about 20 minutes to hit the top of the hour, 2 o'clock. The mid-year budget presentation that was scheduled to start at 2 o'clock.
Or 10 a.m. Yeah.
At 10 a.m. has still not started. If it gets to 2 p.m. and it hasn't started, that will be a 4-hour delay. In recent times, that is quite unprecedented. But George has told you that there were times when Setekwe had to do some really tough negotiations.
That was even for budget.
For budget,
even
the main budget itself. And I'm sure Dr. Mohamed Amin Lamte, Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam does not want to get himself in the same soup. He wants to make some progress. We can confirm that the minister himself came to Parliament quite early.
Yeah.
Normally, some talks will have to be had with the leadership.
The Speaker's
I've seen
lobby.
pictures, in particular, from the majority leader's office. They had that understanding. He also did have a conversation with the Speaker of Parliament before all these minority issues came up, and they have to address it. And that is why sitting hasn't started. In the morning, I did get some indication. Elton Bro be working his sources, also working my sources. We did get some indication that this was coming. We spoke to a few MPs on the minority side earlier on together with George. They were not willing to give us so much information. But the cat is out of the bag now. It is clear that the minority have real issues for which reason they haven't turned up on the floor. Not a single one of them are in their seats.
But they are all in the
They are all around. If you go to
cafeteria.
the cafeteria, if you go to the coffee shop, they
yes.
are all there. They are all around the precincts of Parliament. The bells have also tolled around Parliament to signal that Parliament will be looking forward to starting their business pretty shortly. The Speaker of Parliament himself, seated in his lobby, we understand, trying to be the mediator in these tough negotiations between both sides to try and get some understanding to reach and all that. And then,
but this thing, Kweku, is not new. The only thing is that maybe it has dragged, or some will say that should it have gotten to this end. So let's put on record, as in the actual issues being negotiated, maybe there's a debate there. But this thing about trying to ensure certain things are done before the minister comes to do the mid-year budget, it happens.
It happens.
But this maybe might have dragged.
And in fact, I was telling Samuel Abujinapo, the minister, that what they call housekeeping matters. There are so many things that they normally do. And what I suspect is happening, and what I suspect is keeping this meeting and these negotiations so long, is that before every big occasion, either the budget, the mid-year budget, the State of the Nation address, there is what is called in Parliament a committee of the whole. That is a closed sitting where members of Parliament dialogue on the outstanding issues that must be addressed by either government or the leadership of Parliament. Normally that is hard. But this committee of the whole was not hard for this. It was announced a week or two ago that there must be a committee of the whole before the minister comes. And in fact, the chief whip did indicate that if that did not happen, there were coming for the Minister of Finance may not be so welcoming. That's what we are saying. Yesterday, they did try to hold a committee of the whole, but it was just for the Interior Minister to brief MPs on some alleged illegal recruitment that are being made into the security agencies. That happened, but the committee of the whole meeting, as regards to these businesses about the Assembly's Common Fund, housekeeping matters, that did not happen. And this is what the results is what we are reaping now. Almost 4 hours of delay in terms of when we expected that the minister himself will address the House, and that is not happening. From all indication, in fact, early on, I did say that this could drag on to 3 o'clock. I was just saying that. But it's almost 2 o'clock. And if it gets to 2, then you are looking at 3. By the time we know, we are looking at 4 or 5 p.m., and sitting will not have started. The presentation will not have been delivered. Are we going to see the first time that such a crucial business is taken in the evening? It's possible. Parliament sits in the evening to approve ministers.
And again, for Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam, I don't think that he is his wish for this to happen. Being his first time, he's doing this, and to make sure that you get this thing done as quickly as possible as well. So I don't know what role he'll be playing in ensuring that let these concerns be addressed as quickly as possible so we can get on to business for the day.
Right. So, Kojo and team, you can take it up from the studio, but the situational report in Parliament is that it's about 15 minutes to the top of the hour, 2 o'clock p.m., close to 4 hours since Parliament advertised that it was going to start proceedings today. Finance Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam expected to present a mid-year budget review. There is no show. The minister is around. Finance Ministry officials are all around. But the minority side have not taken their seat, and they are the ones holding these parliamentary proceedings from beginning. We understand tough negotiations are underway, good progress are made, but not a final conclusion having been reached, and that will mean sitting has delayed for close to 4 hours now, George.
And indeed, we might be in for quite a long haul for today when it comes to the mid-year budget review. From us, Kojo will be here, and getting all the details when it comes to this mid-year budget review. Over to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, George and Kweku, who, of course, will remain in place at Parliament to bring you the very latest as it unfolds on this rather unexpected development on the day when we were expecting to have the mid-year budget review shared by the Finance Minister on the floor of Parliament. Looks like after 4 hours of delay, it's still not clear whether this will happen or not. Now, what's the background? We obviously understand, if you just joined us, that the minority members of Parliament are there. They are in the building, but not a single one of them has yet taken his seat on their side of the floor. And you can see that from your images on the screen if you're watching us on the Joy News channel or on our YouTube or Facebook Live channels, that there is only half a room occupied in the main chamber of Parliament this afternoon. Now, we are 4 hours into the delay, and we're told that these 4 hours have been spent in some deep negotiations between the two sides of the floor. What are they negotiating? We're yet to get the detail, but we're told to be optimistic that these negotiations are soon to yield results. Leadership of both sides are engaged in these talks, and of course, whatever it is that is required in order for the two sides to come to an agreement and be present in the House of Parliament for the mid-year budget review to be delivered, we are hoping that they will come to some amicable resolution. But of course, here in the studio, we can continue our conversations and deliberations. I've got to say, though, before we get back into the detail, because there is so much detail to discuss, but here in the studio, I have with me Wisdom Pano, who, of course, is one of the associate directors dealing with tax at Deloitte. We are also joined by Seth Chuma Kwabwa, who runs the Association of Ghana Industries. We had Professor Peter Korte earlier, the head of ISE. We lost him. But we've still got our two guests with us. And I'm interested in your thoughts so far. Interesting drama unfolding in Parliament. By now, we expect it to have been done with this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's indeed an interesting development. I must say that as a business advisor, the business community do pay particular attention to budget statements, mid-year budget review. So I can expect that there will be a lot of individuals, businesses, investors, both within and without, looking forward to this statement. So it is an interesting development, in some way disappointing, but we are hoping that the leadership of Parliament would bring in their own mechanisms to resolve whatever is holding the presentation, so that we can have the presentation and see where we are, how we have fared over the past 6 months or so, and where we are headed for the rest of the year. 5 months ahead of us. It is an election year, and I was out of the country last week and interacted with people who look at Ghana from outside. There is particular attention around how our economy will fare in this election year. And so I'm really looking forward to having the statements read after whatever the issue is resolved, and we having some clarity how we forecast how 2024 would go for all of us.
Seth, let me just get a general semblance of how important today's presentation is to industry. If it doesn't happen, what level of disappointment would you say that would bring to the industry? I'm made to understand that we have some issues with our connection with Seth Chumakwabwa. We will see if we can reconnect with him. But listen, I want you to stay with us. There's a lot more for us to talk through. We're going to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into further issues as we continue to do our analysis in the anticipation of the delivery of the mid-year budget review.